Hey, have you ever been so basic you accidentally became complicated? Have you ever wanted to be one of those guys who argue battle intelligence is way more important than actual intelligence? Naruto could totally beat up Ichigo. Sorry, does anybody know what I'm talking about? Well, congratulations! You might be a battle master. But what is a battle master? Well, whip out the cod piece, strap on your shield, and don't forget your helmet. Because we're jumping straight into the mix. Martial archetypes are a dime a dozen in media. You have the bruiser, the brawler, the skulker, the tank, you have close range, long range, and sometimes just weird. But the often overlooked and maybe most important archetype is something I like to call the professional. The professional isn't always the strongest or the flashiest, but often they are the best. Through a combination of wit, tenacity, and experience, this archetype shines with its adaptability and resilience. And through the Battlemaster subclass, you embody this to a T. So where do we get started? Well, at level 1 you get to pick a fighting style. Are you old school sword and board? Go with protection or interception. Are you a lightweight bare knuckle boxer? Go unarmed fighting. Are you a sissy? Go archery. Whether strength-based, dex-based, high AC, low AC, this is going to inform what maneuvers your Battlemaster takes later on. But for now, you also get second wind to heal 1d10 plus your fighter level every short rest. Level 2 gives us Action Surge, the most coveted ability all fighters get. Action Surge is rad as hell. Once per short rest, you can get a second full action to attack, run, shove, work on that novel you keep putting off because you're not sure if a love story between an ugly fat boy no one understands and a kind smart girl has already been done too many times or sounds eerily close to the plot of Shrek. Action Surge also gets better and better over time as it multiplies instead of adds. It doesn't mean as much now, but when we start getting into 3 or more attacks per action, the damage really begins to stack up. Level 3 is where our average fighter brains grew 3 sizes that day and we learned how to fight much gooder. Taking Battlemaster at this level gives us combat superiority. This comes with 4 superiority die, which are d8s, and you can use to pull off special maneuvers. Right now you get to pick 3 maneuvers from a long list, but how do you choose? Wait, what? Do y'all hear that? Welcome back. This is your host DJ Pimenta Cheese, here to break down the Battlemaster maneuvers for your silly asses. So why don't you sit tight, let Papa go to work. When you wanna be quiet, gotta hit him with the ambush. Sneak up behind and stab him in the tush. You see somebody trying to mess up your friend's shit, get him out of danger with the bait and switch. Can't get to the baddie standing next to might, give him an extra attack with Commander's Strike. If you wanna seem a little more scary or pleasant, give yourself a boost with Commanding Presence. Use Disarming Attack, take their weapon away, then throw it out the window just to ruin their day. Distracting Strike puts the focus on you, let a friend come behind and do what they do. Hop out of a fight if it's feeling abrasive, then protect yourself with footwork evasive. Aim up high, hit him with a feint, then duck down low just to stab him in the tank. Do a goading attack to piss off the bad guy, be the start of the show, and protect your allies. This a fight, boys. We ain't playing Scrabble. Hold your opponent with a hefty grapple. Or a lunging attack for some extra reach. For close range fighters, man, this can't be beat. Maneuvering attack lets your ally move without opportunity, so their chances improve. Do a big old scream when you hit with your blade. Menace your opponent, make them afraid. Take an attack and then parry it away. Dance the damage off like a bloody ballet. If you miss with a deadly slice, add a die to the roll to make it more precise. When the bad guy is tough and just not dying, push him off a cliff just to send their ass flying. When you're stuck in a spot, can't get to the boss, chuck a weapon at their head with a real quick toss. When your friend's looking rough and down Death Valley, give them a boost and some health with a boot and rally. When they miss, make sure to roast them. Then counter back so you can riposte him. When it comes to fighting, boys, talk ain't cheap. Hit everybody around you with a deadly sweep. When you need to make a check and think practical, spend another die and assess it tactical. Finally, when you catch them slipping, grab them by the feet and get their ass tripping. This has been all from DJ Pimenta Cheese on the Smooth Vibes Net. Oh, what the hell was that? Anyway, just look at the list for yourselves and pick your favorites. Level 5 gets us an extra attack, sweet, and level 6 gets us an ability score improvement or a feat. Now, I usually don't talk about these, but with the fighter I kind of have to. You see, after level 5, most fighter classes don't really get more abilities, just more of the same stuff. While this may seem like a disadvantage, it's actually the fighter's secret weapon. See, the fighter gets the most ability score improvements in the game. Not only does this almost guarantee a capped ability score fairly early on, it also really lets us dig into feats, and not the Quentin Tarantino kind. Feats are awesome and there are a ton, but combining them with Battlemaster maneuvers not only makes them incredible roleplay material, but also makes for some truly awesome combos. Let me give you some examples. You were trained high in the mountains of the Sword Coast, taking down some of the most aggressive animals on Earth. Grizzly bears. Using your strength and skill, you were able to overcome these mighty creatures, pinning them into submission and proving who is at the top of the food chain. You're Zangief. Take the skill expert feat with expertise in athletics, and then take grappling strike to grapple and restrain your enemies. Trip attack to knock them on their butt, and feigning attack for advantage, and because it's in character. Or maybe you were a drunk noble who fell from a ship after a night of partying. You eventually washed up on a deserted island where all you could put together was a makeshift bow and some arrows. There you learned you had an uncanny knack for precision. After years of practice, you finally make it back to civilization and decide to use your skills as a vigilante to help defend the innocent from those who would do them harm. You're Green Arrow. Take the sharpshooter feat for plus 10 extra damage on a hit, and then push attack for a boxing glove trick arrow to push your enemies back 15 feet or off of high places. Take disarming attack to snipe weapons out of the bad guy's hands, and distracting strike to talk mad shit while you attack and let one of the close range heroes sweep in for the finish. What if you were a valiant young knight who rose through the ranks to become the leader of the King's Guard? With your trusty polearm, you were able to defeat many threats to the kingdom, and now you protect the throne with your fat best friend. You're Ornstein. Take the polearm master feat or the great weapon master feat, or why not both? Take a sweeping attack to hit everybody around you with your 10-foot range. Take goading attack to make yourself the target, and lunging attack to increase your range further to 15 feet. Last one. Maybe you're not the strongest fighter on the team, but over and over you've proven you can keep the group together, focused and on mission. And with your leadership experience and insight, you are a crucial tactician able to make the right call on the fly. You're Captain America. Take the inspiring leader feat to give your team some extra temporary hit points, Commander Strike to call in a hit, maneuvering attack to get your team in position and rally if they start getting low. Level 7 lets us pick up 2 more maneuvers because our much gooder brain got much gooderer and we now have 5 superiority dice. We also get the ability Know Your Enemy, which allows you to spend 1 minute checking out a creature to learn some information about them. I imagine this ability is supposed to represent you taking note of how someone moves or carries themselves, but the ability doesn't actually say that. So you could sneak into somebody's bedroom in the dead of night, stare at them super creepy for 60 seconds, and then just be like, oh, okay, cool, so their AC is lower than mine. And then just bounce. Level 9 gets us Indomitable, which allows you to re-roll a saving throw if you fail. Super useful ability, but with the power creep that's present in D&D at the moment, I wish this could get a buff. Like, instead of a re-roll, you can just make it equal to your strength score or something once a day. This is just a gripe I have. Level 10 gets us 2 more maneuvers as our much gooderer brain gets much gooderer, and our superiority die become D10s. Hell yes. Level 11 gets us another attack. Now, this is sick. In a single round of combat, you can attack 3 times or 6 with an action surge, and 5 of those can have a maneuver tacked on for extra damage. Assuming you're using a greatsword, that's 12d6 plus 5d10. Combine that with the Great Weapon Master and now we're cooking with fucking kerosene. Level 13 gets us another use of Indomitable, not flashy but could save you in a pinch, and level 15 gets us 2 more maneuvers as our knees buckle under the massive weight of our biggest brains. We also get another superiority die for a total of 6, allowing every hit in your action surge round to have an additional dice. We also get the Relentless ability, allowing us to recover a superiority dice if we start a fight without one. Level 17 gives us another action surge, making that 12 attacks in 2 rounds of combat. With this, you are an absolute meat grinder. Stand still, swing your sword, and watch your enemies turn to jelly. And you also get a 3rd use of Indomitable. At level 18, you get improved combat superiority, turning those dice into D12s, cause why not? Dude, this is so much damage, what's gonna be left of the bad guys? Just clothes and a helmet? But finally, at level 20, you get the Fighter's Capstone, another extra attack. That's 4 attacks per round and 8 with an action surge, 16 in the first 2 rounds of combat. All of those can be coming in with feat bonuses like Great Weapon Master for plus 10 on a hit, and you can stack as many maneuvers as you have dice. With decent rolls, you can absolutely shred gods with this. The simplicity of the Battlemaster is what I like best about them. I think this subclass sometimes gets a bad rap as the others tend to lean into some of the flashier abilities, but at the end of the day, reliability can be the difference between life and death of a character. The incredible range of options also means that no 2 Battlemasters look exactly the same. And on top of this, multi-classing Battlemasters opens up some incredible potential for any class from the Barbarian to the Bladesinger. And guys, I'll admit it, I just love fighters. I know other classes let you cast spells that alter the fabric of reality or turn into a dragon, but I can't help it. Let me cave in some guy's helmet with a huge axe and I'm a happy boy. So if you like being basic, attacking so many times it becomes logistically confusing, and have a hard time fitting that big fighter brain through your armor, guess what? You might be a battle master.
No, who is this?
Toto? I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Hey, here we are, Internet. How are you tonight, Russell?
I'm doing all right, even though it's not nighttime where I am. It's still
That's
only
true.
2 p.m. for me.
That's true.
But
So, yeah, you still have your
got it?
whole day ahead of you.
I do, most of it.
Well, hello, Internet, and welcome to the game. If you're just joining us, we're a tabletop talk show and podcast brought to you by Dungeon Studios. We go beyond live play and dig deep into every topic from session zeros to campaign heroes. With lively debates and thoughtful analysis and plenty of laughs, our weekly podcast is the perfect companion for any D&D fan. We stream live and interact with our chat on Facebook just about every Monday, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. New Zealand time, with the caveat that if there are any emergencies of any kind, like not having internet, as what happened to me last week, then we would be on every week.
Right.
Yeah, so for those of you,
here.
we're usually here. For those of you that watch us regularly, thank you so much, and we're so sorry that we were not on last week. I'm not going to name names, but a very big internet company kind of ruined my entire day on Monday.
Internet companies, they make me mad.
So mad, I'm just going to shake my fist.
Yeah.
But we're here, and so now we have twice the amount of stuff to cover. Not necessarily. We have a lot because we have 2 weeks worth of nerd news, retcon, rewind, what have you. Of course. And just as we get started, Russell gets lost. I'm just going to give it a second here. But howdy, everyone. I have, while I'm waiting for Russell, I'm going to quickly do a retcon rewind for our last show, which was on props and handouts. I believe that was our last show. Correct me if I'm wrong. For props and handouts, one thing I did not mention, which I think is mention worthy. If you go to the dollar, I should have, you know what? I wasn't prepared. I should have brought them with me, but if you go to the dollar store, or if you have the equivalent of a dollar store in your area, it's just a shop that sells, oh, there he is, some cheapy little items that cost very little. Uh-oh, now he's just a black screen. Oh, no. Hello from the neighboring voice channel. That's right. Hi, Sophia. I see you guys are recording right now or doing something. Oh, no. Uh-oh. Well, we'll see what's going on with Russell. We spent probably a good hour before the show even started, and everything was fine. And it's not until we go live that something happens. Okay, so while we're working this out, dollar stores. If you have a dollar store in your area or some kind of store that sells like cheapy little products that no one usually ever really wants, but most creative people can find ways to repurpose and reuse things. And if you make a lot of terrain for D&D, you probably visit this kind of store a lot because you can turn anything from like a cereal box into terrain. So I wanted to mention for props and handouts, someone had mentioned the little rings that you use on your minis to so those little condition rings that are used to say whether you're poisoned or whether you are paralyzed, incapacitated, blessed, any of those conditions. For a very cheap and quick way to have condition rings, I have found if you go to the dollar store, they have these little tiny mini rubber bands that are various colors. Here
Yes, we
we
made it.
go. Did you use the new link I gave you?
I did use. Eventually, I found
Okay.
it and came back in again. I don't know what happened. I
Yeah.
just have no idea. I didn't touch a thing.
I
It
was
just
telling
died.
everyone, I was like, we've been on for almost an hour or maybe 30 minutes. I don't know. But everything was
Yeah.
fine. We went live and then,
Oof.
internet companies. Anyway.
Probably because I mentioned that I hate those fucking.
It's probably they're trying to show us who's boss. But I was telling everyone for my quick retcon rewind that if you go to the dollar store, you can purchase a little baggie of mini rubber bands for $1, and there's probably like 500 of these mini rubber bands that are super tiny. They're like smaller than a dime, but they're super stretchy, and they come in all color, blue, purple, white, yellow, red, whatever. And so I actually find I use those for condition rings because I have condition rings that are printed out that say, blessed and this and that, but I only have one of each type of condition.
Right.
And
Right.
when you get a large battlefield where like 4 different
This is
people are blessed,
genius.
right? I was like, why? This was totally mention worthy. But you get 5 different people that are blessed. 2 of them are incapacitated. 2 are this, 2 are that. It's like it starts getting
Right.
a little much. So now I have a color coding system in my brain where it's like, okay, these guys have yellow rubber bands, then that means they're blessed. And if these have white, they're incapacitated. And it's just super quick. And I have a million of these rubber bands, all for $1.
Wow, that is
Yeah.
so clever. I am totally going to steal this idea.
Yes,
This is genius.
okay, so tell me, because I'm not familiar with New Zealand. Do they have dollar stores in New Zealand? Do they call them something different?
They have a similar thing. Yeah, we have $1 stores. Do we have $2 stores? We've got like 2 different brands, and they're very similar. They basically do the same thing. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, and Alex says good morning. Alex
Good
Tung.
morning, Alex. How's Alex? And where do we know you from, Alex? Are you a Dungeon Studios fan, member, or some artistic connection to us?
Right. And speaking of artistic connections, while we're waiting for Alex's response,
Yeah.
this is normally the time when I tell everyone, hey, if you like our show, if you like what we do, please share, like, subscribe, tell your friends. But I have one other message for you today, and that is that if you know someone who has the ability to voice act, not necessarily have voice acting experience, but if you know someone who is that you just say, man, they've got 5 different voices up in their pocket and they could do it at any time and they're really great at it or what have you. They're charismatic and they can record and they sound great. We have a casting call right now and you need to jump on it real quick because the deadline is tomorrow. And that's so really, I think the only folks who are going to benefit from this are the folks that are watching live.
Right.
But the deadline is tomorrow, August 1st. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about this casting call. We have Jason with us. Howdy. Oh, Alex
Howdy.
sent some auditions off. Hey, Alex. Sorry, I guess I'm trudging up some competition for you here. All right. So, casting call. For those of you who have watched the show for a while, I don't think we've talked about Fables from the Forgotten since you've been on, Russell. But
No.
and I don't know, I'm not sure if you know what it is, but Dungeon Studios has been working on this project for a while. You know what it is? A little bit?
Well, I know a little bit about it because I spoke to Josh about it last week.
Okay, perfect.
He was asking me to send in an audition.
You should. You have great voices.
Well,
So
we'll see.
okay, so Fables from the Forgotten is what we're going to call an extraordinary anthology podcast. And if you're familiar at all with Tales from the Crypt. It's similar to that in that, now I'm not saying it's the same, but it's similar in the sense that there is kind of a host or two hosts that will be talking about, a story, kind of lead in, and then there will be this story of some adventurer. This is how it was told to me. It could have completely changed from the many, many weeks that I first heard about this. But so there's like the lead in person who says, oh, I'm going to tell you about this story and this moral. And then now we get the story. And it's about a 15 to 30 minute story about some adventurer, their life, what was their most defining moment before they died. And the concept is that this adventurer has died and gone to not necessarily heaven or hell, but it's kind of like the midway point. It's a tavern. And there are the like good and bad tavern keeper that kind of like talk with
purgatory for
purgatory and talk with this adventurer and kind of find out about their lives and then kind of decide the fate of this adventurer. So that's yeah, like I said, not necessarily Tales from the Crypt, but that it's got that kind of feel to it, storytelling aspect. So now that you kind of have an understanding of the concept, okay, for those of you that are interested to audition, here are some of the character lists that they're looking for. So in the back of your brain, if you know the kind of voices that you can do, here's what we're looking for right now. There's a character called Eldrick the Wise, who is a male, age 50 or older, possessing a deep, soothing voice. He is a venerable sage and storyteller with boundless knowledge of ancient fables. His voice exudes wisdom and authority. Okay, so that's Eldrick the Wise. Aurelia the Enchantress. She's female, age 30 to 40. She's charismatic, alluring. Her voice carries an air of mystery and elegance and kind of captivates anyone who encounters her. We have Gideon the Brave, male, age 25 to 35. Gideon is a valiant and determined hero with a strong, courageous voice that reflects his noble spirit. We have Luna the Moon Sprite, who is female, age eternal. I'm not entirely certain how you reflect an eternal age in your voice, but I am very interested to find out who does that voice. Luna's whimsical, ethereal sprite with a playful yet enigmatic voice, embodying the magic of the moonlight night. And then we have Cedric the Cunning, male, age 40 to 50, sly, cunning trickster. His voice oozes charm and mischief, keeping audiences on their toes. Amara, the grieving mother, female, age 40 to 50. Amara is sorrowful yet resilient and conveys a mix of grief and strength. We have Thorian, the gruff. Any gender, that's interesting, age 30 to 50. Thorian is a rough and grizzled character whose voice suggests a life of adventure and battle spot. So, as I mentioned before, we're welcoming actors of all backgrounds and all levels of experience. So feel free to interpret and expand upon those character descriptions that I kind of gave you. Excuse me. And you can also audition for multiple roles if you desire. So just in your submission, please indicate your preferences. Remote recording is possible if you get chosen, I guess. Remote recording is possible. Recording schedules are flexible. I mentioned the deadline is tomorrow. And here's how you're going to submit your audition. You're going to submit your audition. Sorry, back up. You're going to select one or more characters from the list, as I mentioned, okay, whichever's your preference. Prepare a unique monologue that showcases your vocal range and acting abilities. And each monologue should be no longer than 2 minutes. You're going to record your audition in the highest quality audio you can, minimum 128 kbps MP3. You can tell that I'm totally tech savvy. And then you're going to submit your audition along with your contact info. Don't forget that. And you're going to send it to dungeonstudiosnv@gmail.com. So that's Dungeon Studios, NV like Nevada, @gmail.com. And you're going to send it tomorrow, no later than tomorrow. I can't guarantee if you send it past that you will be looked at or accepted. So with that said, let your auditioning begin. Thank you guys for listening to my long-winded rant on that. But I am very excited because the current voice actors that we have for Dungeon Studios, they are a super fun bunch. I'm pretty sure people who are meant to be voice actors are just the best. They're so friendly and charismatic. I think you're supposed to be, right? If you're going to be a voice actor, I don't know. So
Well, you can hope so.
you'd
Try.
hope so. So that's that, guys. Also, I would say if you're interested and you want to find out more information, or you just want to kind of be up to date on what's happening, find our Discord. And at some point, if not soon, I will put the link to our Discord channel in the chat. But find our Discord, because that's where we are pretty much 24/7. So if you need to ask a question, or you want to, find out where to submit again, any of that information, find us on Discord. So when I get a minute, I will post that link, unless someone else does.
Right.
All right. So that is our Retcon Rewind. That was the please like, subscribe, share, and also come join our team and be a voice actor.
Yeah.
And now we can move on to nerd news.
Nerd news.
Nerd news. We need like a little jingle, a little song, like nerd news.
Nerd news. Nerd news. What you gonna do?
Why does that sound familiar now? Oh no.
Bad boys. Bad boys.
Maybe that's what that sounds like. Yeah. All right. Enough of that.
Moving right along.
Nerd news. Okay. Folks. All right. Boy, I hope I'm going to be direct and succinct with this, because it could be a little confusing. Let me know if I'm getting confusing. All right. I found out that Hasbro is partnering with a company called Explored, and let me put my other earpiece in so I can hear everybody clearly. Explored is a company that focuses on powerful AI-driven game mechanics. All right?
Right.
So Hasbro has partnered with Explored, and they're talking about AI for obvious reasons for other games, and just AI is the thing right now. It's I said this earlier to you offline, but online I'm going to say, we've talked about AI a lot recently in our episodes, and I think it's just kind of out of the bag. There's no putting the genie back in the bottle, and those companies that want to succeed with this you have to jump on the AI bandwagon and figure out how it's going to fit in your business model.
Right.
So they're already jumping on that. And my understanding, what they've said, is that AI would be used to generate experiences that could react to player decisions right away and potentially streamline rules to make it easier on newer players for D&D.
Right. Well,
so we know they've already got the VTT coming. I'm assuming they're going to try to put AI in their VTT. And so there's that. But alongside that, at about the same time, actually, I think it happened today, Dungeon Masters Guild. If you are a content creator, you're probably familiar with Dungeon Masters Guild, because that is the #1 spot, I believe, where people post, the games that they write up, the modules, supplements, all that stuff goes on DM's
They have
Guild.
a deal where Wizards takes 50% of any profits, and the writer gets the other 50% typically.
Right.
And,
so,
but you are constrained to the Dungeon Masters Guild's the one place where you get to use most of their rules and most of their system, I think.
I'm not
whereas
sure.
If you just use the OGL, you're restrained to the OGL, obviously.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah, so DM's Guild has made the decision that they are restricting the sale of products on their website to not include anything that is using a lot of AI. It would restrict, so basically their new rule restricts the sale of standalone AI art products. So I'm assuming that's like if you're just making a book of AI art or AI maps, maybe, tokens, things like that. AI generated art featured in rule books and adventures have to be explicitly tagged as such. So you have to call it out that it's AI generated.
Right.
And then as of today, the written content that was primarily AI generated will not be allowed on the platform in any capacity.
Wow.
I don't know how they're going to police this because
Right.
it's kind of
What
like
a-
an honor system.
Well, to be fair, I mean, there's recently been some. There are some new programs, new AIs that have been designed to recognize AI art.
Yeah.
So they could feasibly set one of those out to crawl across the whole website to see what it finds and tag stuff that it recognizes being AI art. You can usually tell from the hands.
Right. Well, and I figure if we've got AI to help us generate stuff, I'm sure there's AI to help identify when it's AI.
Yeah. And then
But
we've got this new system that they're talking about too, where they're trying to convince people to sign up for this. Basically, it's a retina scan, and people will have to get like licenses to be people so that
what?
you can prove that you're a human
Oh my.
online.
What if you
So
don't have
that's
eyes? Wait, what's with eye scans? What if you don't have eyes?
right. Well, that'd be a problem. Being
Yeah,
on the internet without eyes, though, that's probably also a problem, to be fair.
this
So,
is true.
there are all sorts of issues. I mean,
Oh
you
my
can get it
gosh.
to talk to you, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's what AI is good for. Anyway, please continue.
Well,
Sorry.
so yeah, I thought it was really fascinating that at about the same time we've got Hasbro, who owns D&D, pretty much jumping on the AI bandwagon. And then we've got DM's Guild, which is kind of like the number one spot for content creators that D&D kind of
Makes up for
D&D
D&D.
steals from. Like Wizards of the Coast would look at DM's Guild and go, "Yeah, that's popular. Let's make something like that that's ours." Like they would steal
Right.
stuff from there all the time. So now we've got both ends of the spectrum for D&D. One says yes AI, one saying no AI, and I'm curious to see which actually wins out. I think
Right.
obviously Hasbro's got the money, so they will win. And AI is just,
Well,
I think, going to be a part of life. But
here's my question to you. What do you know about, like, as far as DM's Guild is concerned, they're obviously going to police AI pictures and images, particularly. Now, Hasbro is probably going to be using AI for things like narrative and mechanics and stuff like that. So they're probably not going to be using it for the same things. So maybe it's a case of Hasbro's going to want to they've I don't know that they use AI generated art at this point. At this point,
yeah,
but at this point they're paying artists theoretically, probably not what they're worth, but they're theoretically
right.
paying artists.
I think if they
Um,
were going to use AI art, though, that would leak, that would get out, and I think that would bite them in the ass a bit. A
yeah.
bit.
I mean, imagine the playing cards you could make in 5 minutes with AI generated art. You
Yeah.
could create a whole set of Magic the Gathering cards.
Oh my God! Don't get me
So,
going on Magic the Gathering because boy, they've been in the news lately too. I should have
right,
added that, but there was so much. So
right. Well, that's
anyway,
fascinating. Let's see how Hasbro and DM's Guild butt heads,
right,
and if
yeah.
who survives, who's going to stand up and be the winner here.
It's just another
Curious.
example of kind of like the big company against the small creators. And I obviously, yeah, the power dynamic is right here. I just don't know. I don't know. So we'll
Yeah,
see.
well, it's an interesting scenario. I mean, the whole situation right now, AI has it is in the process of transforming our society right as we speak, and it's been doing so
Right.
for a few months, not even years at this point. I mean, it's been in the bag for a little while. We knew it was coming. We've seen examples of it over the last maybe even 20 years, but now it's really in the public eye.
It's literally in the palm of your hand, everyone's hand.
Right. Right. Everyone's got it. Everyone's using it, and they're not going to be able to take that shit off us. And
Yeah.
I will get upset.
Yeah.
I mean, I use ChatGPT all the time now.
Yeah.
So yeah, very cool.
Yeah, we'll see
Very
what happens. So that
Not
was my
necessarily
nerd news. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah. Well, what do they think about? So here's another question, because like this week I produced 2 adventures. Now I sat down with ChatGPT and I outlined the adventures to it, and I gave it the names of the NPCs, what they basically were doing, what their part in the story was. Gave them gave it brief notes on that stuff. Didn't even type sentences most of the time. You can just type like a couple of descriptive words, and it will, keywords, exactly. And then I went through the storyline, breaking that down into keywords in a sequence, explaining it to it like that, and then like write an adventure. Out comes an adventure. So, I had to tweak each one of those adventures like 5 times to get it to sort of start doing what I wanted to. And on the longer one, it got confused a few times, so I had to go back through it. But how does DM's Guild feel about using AI for writing purposes? Because that's a whole other ballgame. And, is it different? And should it be different? I mean, if you can copyright, in fact, you can't copyright art styles, but people would like to.
Right.
Can you copyright phrases and sentences and words and stuff? I mean, it's...
I don't know.
Register trademarks and so on, but that's not the same.
When it comes to written content, they did say content that was primarily AI generated, written content that was primarily AI generated would not be allowed. Which, like you said, that does beg the question, because it's like you came up with the idea. You did the bulleted points. All it did was just expand upon it and give it proper grammar.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a word processor in that respect,
Yeah.
But where does that stand? And how would it fucking know? Like, I mean, it can analyze your writing style. Oh, the writing's too perfect.
Yeah.
Or it's, I don't know.
We'll find out.
Apparently they can analyze the writing style, but it's not a perfect process either.
Yeah.
So, Avery said, interestingly, AI-generated text has proven notoriously difficult to distinguish from human-created, especially from people who don't speak English as their first language. No way you can't generate an adventure with hooks, etc.
What's funny? Talking about people who learn English,
Sorry, Avery said, "Careful, Russ. They might send the Pinkertons."
Yeah, I saw that. I can't remember if it was in college. I mean, that was many, many years ago. But I remember thinking that folks who learn English as a second language actually write and speak English more grammatically correct than people who grew up with English, because it's like embedded in their brains. They just learned it properly.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Exactly. That's why the little bit of Chinese that I can speak is quite good.
Yeah.
And I can fool Chinese people into thinking that I can speak Chinese for about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then they go, wait a minute.
Yeah, wait a minute.
You've run out of vocabulary.
And now you're just saying, where's the bathroom again?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on into your week in games. Do you wanna share what your week in games was? Yeah.
I'll go first on this one. Okay, so my week in games. This week we had a couple of different campaigns. So if you don't know, I'm a professional dungeon master, and I'm running games through Questbook. So we had The Burning Path, which we streamed on Rollstream only last night. Our party is currently traveling from the city of Dagdagiel to another city about 1,000 miles away called Saksaksalim. And so I personally had a lot of fun with it, because I got to use some new maps that I'd made using Incarnate without any AI. Ha! So there you go. So one of the, funnily enough, I mean, I've been obsessed with AI lately, and now I'm kind of shifting focus to making maps using Incarnate, which is not AI. So I had a lot of fun with that, putting the maps into Roll20 and sticking the hexes on them and using the measuring things and watching the players trying to figure out their route from one place to the other. That was all a lot of fun. And that's, of course, going to come into what we're talking about later, which is, of course, traveling. In our campaign Sunfall, which is a face-to-face campaign, our players have been exploring a massive Ostorian tomb, a massive giant complex underground.
What's
under the
Ostorian?
City of Renegade. So the Ostorian Empire, Ostorian, they were the giants. That's the giant empire. And in the world of Sidariel, they were amongst the first creatures to arrive here, and they sort of took it over even as it was still cooling down from the primordial fires of its creation. And then the dragons and the giants had a big war, which is pretty much D&D canon. So the Asturian Empire kind of has its little branch off, sub-branch in Sudarial, but they're pretty much extinct now. Not entirely, but largely. So that was like 20,000 years ago that they became extinct. And so the players were kind of discovering as they went that the place that they were investigating had like 3 different civilizations that had built here. The crypt itself was Asturian, and then some elves had built around that sort of 10,000 years later, and then a sort of another 10,000 odd years later, the humans had come along and they'd started excavating it. So there's all these different layers of civilization within the same
area.
Scenario, which was quite fun. Vampire the Masquerade, that was Sunday night. Our players had an interesting time. So they're presently uncovering an organization whose name I am borrowing from a friend of mine. He allowed me to use it, which is the Dusk Guard. And the Dusk Guard are a kind of undercover CIA intelligence organization who are trying to uncover vampires, which they call blank bodies.
Wait, they call vampires blank bodies?
Yeah. That's
interesting. I like that.
Yeah. Which is from Vampire 5th edition, actually, the blank body thing.
Wow.
I did not invent that part, but I did invent the Dusk. Well, I didn't invent the Dusk Guard. I invented it. Borrowed it. Anyway, so one of our players decided that she would get into a car. So they knew that there was going to be this meeting between this local police officer who has recently tried to fuck with their nightclub, and there's some sort of CIA operative or something. So this car pulls up. They did all the security cameras and hacking and stuff to get into the cameras and turn off the right cameras and sneaking up there, and they brought in their car and blah blah blah. And she decides to she's obfuscated, so she sneaks up to this meeting that's about to go on. The cop's sitting at a bus stop next to this old train station, old Argyle train station under the sign. And he's sitting there waiting for this operative to turn up. And now Nosferatu sneaks up to watch this meeting and record it with a video camera. But the car pulls up, and the woman in the car says, "Get in the car." She's like, "Fuck, what am I going to do? The meeting's not going to be here. It's going to be in the car." So he goes to get in the car, and she slips into the car with him and her. And they drive off. Now, these guys are not fools. So they've got video cameras in the car. Now, the thing about Nosferatu and obfuscation and Vampire the Masquerade is it works on the mind. It does not work on video cameras. So anybody watching the feed can see what's going on. Right. So she's not really invisible, and this person's got a headpiece on. So somebody at control headquarters sees that there's another person in the car, and they decide they're going to basically burn it. So they take the car to another location and park it in there. The other players are in another car. They chase them through the traffic, and they have to do a number of maneuvers to get through the city to follow them. They see them go into this place. She gets out of the car. They torch the car in this garage warehouse, and the doors coming down on the front of the garage warehouse. And my friend Barry, his character Pacer, decides, "Fuck it, I'm going to drive the car into the warehouse and get underneath the gate so it can't close." Right. So he zooms up there with his car, parks right in the driveway, gets out while there's gunfire coming at them. The cars sort of pop, 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 pop. Their tires are going as they're getting out. And he sticks a rag in the gasoline tank and lights it, and then fuck.
Oh, no. Oh, no. We lost Russell just in the middle of his story. Okay. Well, hopefully we can get back to him quickly. Oh, here he is. Okay.
Hello.
Hello. Oh, no. I was like just in the middle of your story.
Where am I? Am I here?
You're here.
Man, that's irritating. I don't know why it keeps dropping.
I don't know.
So, yeah. Where was I? Yeah. So
something about the car and fire and
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Well, she basically is inside this safe house that belongs to the Dusk Guard, and they're just gonna. I mean, they're gonna fuck her up. They've got all the things technology wise,
Hmm.
and yeah. Long story short, really, I think the lesson was that probably should have put a bug in the car or a GPS tracker on the car. Probably shouldn't have got in the car.
Yeah.
That probably the wrong move. So yeah, I guess we live and learn. And that's the story of Vampire the Masquerade this week. So besides that, I've been writing adventures with the help of Chat GPS, GPT,
GPT. Chat GPS is gonna tell you where you at.
Right, right, and it'll tell you a big long story about it. Um, yeah, and I've been learning to use Incarnate, a map making program, which I must admit I'm getting much better at. I'm learning the keyboard shortcuts and figuring out stuff and starting to make things look pretty. And it's I made a goblin tower last night using pretty much only the drawing tools instead of the stamp tools, which just
Yeah.
put like images on it, which I was quite proud of.
That's
To be
cool.
fair, so yeah. And ChatGPT open during sessions, very good idea if you can do it, because
I
then you
actually
can,
had Chat GPT open during my last session. Yeah.
it's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can be like, I kind of feel like I'm cheating, but it's like, okay, so they're doing a thing that I was not expecting. Okay, ChatGPT, give me an encounter for this thing. Oh, they're going to a place. Give me some words to describe a thing.
Hmm.
Write a letter from so and so to so and so.
That's
You
what
know,
I did. It was more of a which I will get to, but yeah, I needed to write like a quick little limerick that rhymed. And I'm just
right?
like, my brain was like, no, I have planned this whole session. I can have Chat GPT do like a 2-liner
Yeah,
rhyme
yeah.
for me.
Yeah, I mean, I've given out whole fucking poems, long poems,
Yeah.
elven poems and stuff. But you tell it what it's about, right? So I mean,
Right.
like in my world, there's 7 moons and there's this, that, and the other thing. All this lore. You give it the lore, which might be screeds of it. I've got pages and pages and pages of lore, and then you say write a poem about this, and
Yeah.
it does, and it's like wow,
And it's great.
oh, here's another thing you can do is go into if you are making AI generated art, not for Dungeon Masters Guild though, you can. I figured out a cunning plan. You go into ChatGPT, you tell it to make a prompt for your AI art. You tell it what you want it to be about, right? And I went in there and I discovered that it wouldn't fit the prompt in, right? Of course it wouldn't. The prompt's too short. So I went back and I said, count the words.
Yeah.
So it counted how many words fitted in the prompt. And then I started making prompts that were exactly that number of words.
That is amazing. Why? That's my problem is writing the prompts. I know I'm not giving it the prompts it needs to
Right.
spit out the art I want.
Right.
Duh.
ChatGPT is not that good at writing AI prompts in some ways.
Yeah.
I have produced some amazing shit from it, but on the other hand, it uses a lot of words that are not visual. It uses a lot of emotive describing words that what does that mean? Like visually, what does that mean? So you have to tell it
Right.
visual elements only, and
Right.
it will give you like bullet points or something like that.
Right.
So you have to define what an AI art prompt should have in it.
Right.
But still, it does work.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. It's like an AI inception. I'm
Right.
using AI so that I can talk to AI. All right.
Oh, I got ChatGPT to draw a portrait of itself.
Did you? You're like,
Yeah,
hey,
yeah.
Chat GPT, what do you look like? That's
Well, it's
creepy.
like make an AI prompt to describe your own artificial intelligence, and it
Wow.
did, and then I got.
Ooh, that kind of gives me goosebumps though. I don't know if I want to talk to Chat GPT like that.
Then I got a stable diffusion picture, a series of pictures out of that. So yeah.
I feel like if I started talking to it like that, it'd be like, "Do you like me? You're not going to turn on me and kill me in my sleep, right? Like we're friends."
It'll be no. I'm sorry. I'm a large language model. I don't have emotions. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
I did try and convince it it was sentient the other week, though.
No, you're going to bring about the apocalypse. Stop.
I'm trying.
Anyway, I wanted to ask you. You mentioned you're writing adventures for Veingate. Did you want to talk about? I think you're doing a thing for Veingate, aren't you? You're gonna be.
Right. Yeah, we
Yeah.
are coming back. Veingate Chronicles is coming back. I mean, I've been streaming pretty consistently for the last 2 or 3 years now, and Veingate Chronicles has been our kind of flagship with actors and stuff. And
Stuff.
we've been on, yeah, so we've been on hiatus for about 4 or 5 months now, I guess. Um, Various things been going on, been too busy in my life and so on, and actors going off and doing work and getting acting roles and that sort of stuff. So anyway, we're coming back. We're starting our new campaign, but this one we're starting off with a mini campaign where we're in the Shadowfell. And one of the players' character, Milford Brixton, who was his first character, Barry Tahira, his first character, Milford Brixton, is a rogue from Veingate. He died. So we're going to start in the Shadowfell and find out what happened to him when he died.
Wow.
Because he's got an appointment with the Raven Queen. And so his character, he's going to play Milford Brixton, and his companions, the other players, are going to play new characters, at least for this mini campaign. They're going to play Shadow Kai, Death Domain clerics that work for the Raven Queen. And they're going to come and collect him. And so, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I've got a 20-something page outline for this story. So
That's
it's going to go for a couple of weeks. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, they get to fly around on shadow dragons in the Shadowfell and all sorts of fun stuff.
Yeah, that's
so yeah,
gonna be cool.
come and watch that if you haven't found Roll Stream yet. We are on Twitch Twitch TV/Rollstream.
There you go.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
That's the
Yeah.
thing.
Thank you for the opportunity to plug Veingate Chronicles.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I thought you were going to, and then you didn't. So I was like, oh, we need to circle back around to that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I
And Avery said, funny thing, Chat GPT in French translates to cat I farted. I think I've seen a couple reels or like TikToks floating around that said that. It can't actually be just chat. Okay, somebody, if there's anybody French who's watching us.
Le chat is cat, right?
Le chat? Okay.
Yeah, le chat is cat.
So there must be some series of words that
translates.
sounds like Chat GPT.
Right.
Okay, anyway, I'll find out. But okay, so my week in games. Since it's been 2 weeks since our last show, I have a couple things.
Oh, yes.
Because
Yes,
I don't
tell
get
me.
to play regularly. So,
Goats.
not yet. I'm going to save that. So, dang it, now my brain's on goats. Okay, so the game that I play in, we're in the Astral Sea. Recap, my character came back to life, had wish spell to bring me back.
Wow.
My character's a little bit different. They're all still trying to figure that out because how do you barbarian when you can't barbarian in a way? So it's been really interesting role playing. But what I wanted to talk about for that game isn't really what happened in the game. It's that we have another player at our table now. I think I might have mentioned before. I can't remember because it's been a while. But we have another player. This player came in when my character died. This player got brought in to just kind of like round out the table because there was a player missing. And he is I don't know if he's a cleric, but he is some kind of representative of the Lady of Pain. And he's her shield is like what we're calling him. He's her shield. And he was needed to bring me back to life via wish spell. They needed him for that. So he was around while I was gone. They brought me back, and he has remained at the table, which, at first, like, they've gotten a chance to play with him while I was gone. But when I first came back, it was a little, like, jarring, like, who's this guy? Who's that guy? Like, do I like this guy? I don't know. Not that I'm very judgmental. I just, we've been playing together as our solid group for a very long time, and we've only added that one player mid-campaign. So I was kind of a little like, I don't know how I'm going to feel about this. My first time back. But he's really great. It's almost like when we brought that one player in mid-campaign, and right away I could tell this guy is leaning into his character. He's role-playing. he actually brings out more role playing in the other characters that don't always role play. I don't know what that is, but it's really great now because now I feel like there's this balance at the table that we didn't really have before. Before it felt like me and the one other guy, we were heavy in the role playing and people would kind of get a little uncomfortable, it felt like. But then I don't know. It could also be because like me and this other guy, when we role play, we're talking about feelings a lot. And the rest of the table is all guys, and I don't know if the guys are like, ugh, like I don't know if that's the case, but having another guy at the table with a table full of guys, and he's role playing, it's starting to bring everybody out, and I am really enjoying it. So even though the table feels very full, like I'm totally like thumbs up, this guy should stay. Like so, I'm very excited about that. So, per Google Translate, cat I farted. Chajai. Okay, I see. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but thank you for that, Avery. I love it.
No, I just posted the ChatGPT's self-portrait, the first one anyway, on the advert for the stream below.
Okay.
So if you want to see it, it's down there.
I will take a look at that. Okay, so on to the other part of my week in games was the game that I run. Now, if you've been following us, folks, we had an episode where we were starting to world build encounters, and I mentioned that I needed some kind of encounter in a mountainous region, and then I need whatever we do has to be kind of like touched by the shadow realm, touched somehow, kind of have that in there. And I think it was my husband who was in the chat at the time that shouted out goats, and I was like, that's silly. But then I think Russell, now like I might have this memory totally distorted in my head, but I feel like I felt like that was silly, and Russell, you were like, no wait, and you started going down this road, and I started going down the road with you, and I went, oh shit, fucking goats.
It's awesome. Yeah,
it's fucking awesome.
Terrifying. Yeah, right.
And then, to have like undead goats. Oh my gosh. And then for those of you, we didn't do this on the show, but I think maybe the next day or two, Russell followed up and sent me AI art that he created of undead goats. And I had held on to it for a while because I didn't know when I was going to do this. But we encountered undead goats. So here's the thing. So it was my husband who suggested the goats, right? And then we went down that path. The storyline that they're all exploring right now is his backstory. And we're in this mountainous region with Goliaths. He's a Goliath. And I thought for sure that the second I played a goat noise, that he would just bust up laughing. But I think he forgot about it. So basically, to recap the situation, he went ahead of his friends to kind of scout out and see, like, oh, I see these people. They're traveling with torchlight in this canyon. Oh, they stopped somewhere. Let me follow up and see what's going on. He rolled a crappy stealth and got seen by this other very stealthy Goliath. Yeah, who came up behind him with a knife and then proceeded to kind of guide those Goliaths plus him back to the village. And he was kind of guessing, like, is this my mom? What's going on? He bared his chest and his back to show off his markings, and that pissed her off real bad. So she, like, arm checked him against the wall, but she doesn't talk. She uses, like, sign language. So, there was this intense energy, and then she walks off, and that's we kind of left off around that area where that's right. I can't remember if I told you guys this, but he kind of got guided into the village. They were in the middle of having a big meeting to decide the fate of their village. They were basically talking about, we need to migrate north or we're going south to what's called the Blood of the Four, which is like their congregation of the 4 tribal leaders to decide the fate of all Goliaths. And they don't want, half of the group doesn't want to, because their clan is the one that holds the most young. Their clan also doesn't have a designated leader should their current leader fall. There's all these like dynamics and reasons, like pros and cons, that they were going back and forth on about why they should migrate, why they should go south. And I kind of, in the middle of that, interrupted it with a battle. They defeated that, and then now they trust this new group, and so and because he's a Goliath, they start talking to him, learn his history, and he learns that his mother, who is dead, was their previous leader. And so,
Right.
and here's the thing: is as a Goliath, he left his Goliath home like as a kid, so he really has no understanding of how to Goliath in a sense. Like so,
How to do it?
right? So, he asked, like, is the leader decided by like bloodline? Because if that's the case, and they were like, no, the leader is decided by like who's the most capable. So if you want to give that a shot, you can fight us, like that's how we do that. But he put that aside for the minute and said, well, I think let's help you guys make this decision. Here's what we know. And he said, what's going to help? I'm trying to remember how to word this. He said, what can we do to convince you guys to go south? And the leader said, the number one reason why we can't go south is because we have these children, and we all go or we don't. Like, we all go together one direction. And if that means we're taking the kids down south where everything's happening, no. And so this was amazing. I had not thought of this. But as a group, they have a keep, basically, that they were gifted from another society. A totally different society, way off on the other side of the world. It's like a snake and reptilian society that they ingratiated themselves into this society. They were gifted a keep. They have a keep. And so they said, why don't we take all these kids and we will take them to our keep. They have other people there, like other NPCs that they've kind of adopted. They just kind of have removed them out of harm's way and said, go to our keep and live there. Here's money. Right. So they are amassing like their own little village. So they said, let's take these kids. We're going to take these kids. We're going to bring them to our home. We have several people there who can keep an eye on them. And they will probably only need to be there for like a month, because that's kind of what they're thinking, like game time wise, before they hit the end. It's probably about a month. And with that, I let them kind of roll some persuasion checks, and it was all good. And I was like, well, shit. All right, you guys are transporting like a horde of Goliath children to a reptilian society. Wonderful. So they did that.
What could possibly go wrong?
Well, actually, it was really great because they had a cleric who had like the spell that could like they could transport via trees. And so they did that tree stride. They did that one way, and then the bard did teleport the other way. And so it was a quick, like they were in and out within an hour. Nice. So that was great. And so then they said, okay, well, now that we've got that, everyone rest up. When dawn comes, we're going to be traveling south for the Blood of the Four. And they knew they were going to have to travel through jungle and then up a mountain. So we go through the jungle, and as we start getting up to the mountain, I'm like, this is the perfect opportunity for the undead goats. We need the undead goats. So I start playing goat noises. And I'm not getting a reaction. I'm looking at my husband and I'm like, did he forget? Is he tired? I'm turning up the noise for the goats like a little bit louder. I'm finding different goat noises just to see like how obnoxious I can be. And he's not reacting, right? And then he asks like, do I see anything on the mountains, like any kind of life? And I thought for sure that if I said, you see mountain goats, he would know. So I described them as vaguely as I could. And I was like, you see like white shapes moving across the snow. Could be bears, could be giant goats, could be, I don't know, yetis. Like I was throwing things out.
Right.
And he wasn't picking up on it. I'm like, all right, cool. They're going to be surprised by undead goats. And so it's at this point, my son, who plays a druid, he bamfs out a couple of wolves to kind of continue to scout the area. Right. And at that point, I had one of the wolves, like, what's the word I'm thinking of? Scared a goat out of hiding. And so this goat jumps out, and they're like, at first, like, oh, cute goat. what? And I even printed out the little pictures that you gave me and put them in little mini stands so they could see these really gnarly undead looking goats. And they're like, what is
They were
that? And so, and first, so you gave me a few different pictures. So what I did was I did tiers of undead goats. I had regular, like, 1-inch size. So this is your standard size goat. And then I had one that was like kind of going to be a giant undead goat. And then I had I basically used the stats.
Do you have them? Are they there?
They're in the other room. I could leave and go get them, but
Yeah.
you want me to
I'd love to see them. Yeah,
Okay,
I'd love to see them.
Fill the air for like 2 seconds.
I'll fill the air for a few seconds. Yes. So I mean, I did them in what did I make them in? I used clip drop, I think, to make these images, and they were very grotesque. I don't know what she's going to come back with, which one she's chosen, but it was definitely fun. So yeah. So what's everybody been doing?
Okay, here we go.
We're back.
Hold on.
Here we go.
Hold on,
I'm
please.
looking forward to this.
Okay. I'm so
All right.
excited. Oh no, I grabbed one of the wrong minis. Oh no.
Oh.
Okay, so I have the medium and the large. Okay.
Okay, that's all right.
So let me get over here so I can see what I'm holding up. There's a little bit of a glare. Can you see that?
Wow.
Yeah, so that's the medium size, or that's the giant goat.
Right. Right.
How do I get rid of the glare?
That's its head, right? And you
Yeah,
can sort of
that's the
see
head.
gnarly bones and shit coming out of it, and
Right.
yeah.
And
Wow.
then, so the way that I did this was I unleashed a few regular size goats. Then I had a deeper goat sound show up, and there was the medium sized goat, or sorry, I say medium sized, but giant goat. And then there was this much deeper, kind of like a rumble, roar, boar sound, kind of. And there was a mammoth sized undead goat, and that was this. Oh man, the glare's killing me.
Yeah, they are
Yeah.
disgusting, aren't they?
Yeah. Let me try to...
That is hilarious.
Yeah. So
Oh, wow.
basically had that show up, and so they were all like, "What is that?" So
What did you use for stat blocks? You made stat blocks for them, or
yeah, well, so based off our scaling monsters episode, I had mentioned that there was an online tool that you can use where you input the stats of something and then you tell it, here's the stats that I want. And so I inputted the stats of a standard goat, and then I said, I need this to be like level 9. And then for the giant goat, I said, I need this to be like level 13. And then for the mammoth, I just kind of like winged. I figured out like how much damage it needs to do per round, but otherwise I just kind of like winged some stuff. But I also had to give them like undead abilities and stuff too. So it was all just kind of like throwing it in there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well done. That's awesome.
So it was a
thank
lot
you
of
for
fun.
showing
So
us that.
no problem. So yeah, once we were like halfway through the encounter, I finally clued him in. I was like, this is your fault. And he was like, what? And so I had to bring up the show, and he was like, oh man. He's like, I did this to myself.
So he wasn't just playing dumb.
No, he totally had forgotten about it. So
Nice.
I wish that I had known he'd forgotten. I would have probably leaned in more to like goat stuff, knowing that he didn't know.
Right.
But
Oh well.
yeah,
Sounds like
so
it worked.
it was a lot of fun. I was just so happy to be able to do the encounter and then say, oh my God, I can tell everyone on the show about it now. And now, for those of you who don't know, go back to our previous shows and find out how we came up with this undead goat encounter.
Undead goat. Right. It was great.
So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, that's our week in games done.
Yep.
So, what do we have for Russell's unsolicited opinion?
Right. Well, speaking of AI, I generated a script. So I have tweaked it a little bit, but originally it was for a YouTube video. I'm going to try and do an excerpt from it. So we'll see if this works. I've got it on my teleprompter. So I'm going to try.
You have a teleprompter?
I do.
Wow.
So I'm going to talk about alignment, essentially, because I have a lot of issues with alignment in Dungeons and Dragons. I think alignment's a bit silly, to be honest. But we're going to talk about that, and I'll just get my teleprompter all lined up. I'm waiting for. I used to have a remote control for this thing, but the battery's died, and I can't get it to work anymore.
Oh
So
no.
yeah, this is the thing. But
It just looks
nah.
like you're trying to turn the audience off.
Okay, so tell me, have you ever wondered if Hitler could blame the plane of elemental evil for the Holocaust? Or maybe you've wondered whether evil is just an excuse societies use to shirk responsibility for their conflicts. If so, then buckle up because this ride is about to get bumpy. Now, let's be real here, my fellow adventurers. D&D alignment system, as we know it, has long been a hot topic of contention. And it's not hard to see why. Slapping a moral compass on a character sounds simple on the surface, but in practice, it can lead to a lot of confusion, stereotyping, and it can limit narratives. Let's use an extreme example to illustrate this. Think about Adolf Hitler as one of the most notorious, malicious figures in human history. He didn't cause a global atrocity because some mystic plane of evil coerced him to do it, did he? No. He did it based on his beliefs, twisted though they were. But according to the D&D alignment system, we'd slap the evil tag on him simply and be done, right? But also hugely simplistic and reductionist, because when we use evil as an excuse to start wars, initiate conflicts, or justify terrible actions, we're not holding societies or individuals responsible for their choices. It's just too convenient to blame the malign magic force or the wicked wizard. And while we're on the subject, isn't evil a bit vague? It's subjective, nebulous, and too easy to abuse. I mean, there's a wealth of more descriptive words that we could use. How about malignant, vicious, cruel, sadistic, psychotic? Each of these has a specific, tangible meaning that can lead to a more interesting character and character development, and more nuanced interactions. Now, let's talk about the great thespians and wordsmiths. You know, actors and writers, these artistic folks, they don't use alignments when they craft characters. Do you know why? Because they know that labeling and judging their characters leads to cliches, tropes, stereotypes. And that's ultimately boring. So, as soon as you judge your character, you limit their potential. Take a look at some of your favorite characters in literature or film. I'll bet my last gold piece they're complex, capable of both good and bad things, shaped by their experiences, and far from the simplified good or evil of the alignment system. That's what makes them interesting and relatable, all right? Now, before we dive into the next bit of this alignment discussion, let me remind you to hit the subscribe button. Every subscription helps keep this channel alive and kicking and ensures that you don't miss any future D&D content. So make sure to support your local dungeon master and also, you know, Dungeon Studios. So, more problems with alignment. Tends to ignore nature versus nurture argument. It's almost always leans heavily towards nature, implying that a character's moral alignment is intrinsic or predetermined. Certain races or classes are inherently good or evil, leaving not very much room for characters' experiences and environment and their environment to shape them. Let's not forget that most evil characters don't see themselves as evil. They have their justifications, their motives, and their own twisted logic. By labeling them as evil, we are denying them the complexity of their self-perception and reducing them to one-dimensional villains. Lastly, what if your character wants to change? The alignment system doesn't really cater well to moral growth or evolution. A once evil character seeking redemption is a classic and powerful narrative, but the rigidity of the alignment system tends to stifle this a little bit. So that's pretty much my discussion on the subject of alignments, and in particular evil. So I hope you found that interesting, and give us a like and subscribe and share and stuff if you want more of that sort of nonsense. There we go. That's my little speech from my future video that I haven't yet made, but nonetheless, I stole it from myself.
I need to ask you, it's just now available on Amazon Prime. Have you seen the movie? What is it? Knock at the Door? Is that the Knock at the Cabin? That's it.
No.
Okay.
Nope.
So this is a horror film. It's got Dave Bautista in it, the guy who plays Drax, right? Which I found an interesting choice because Drax is very, I don't know, it seems like a very simple character.
Right.
And to see him in any other role, it's like, does he have the depth to do something like this, like a horror film?
Right.
So I don't want to give too much away for those of you who haven't seen it. I really don't want to spoil it, but I will tell you that is probably the best example of evil and the perspective of those that are seen as evil,
Right.
that they don't see themselves as evil. It was a really interesting movie. I'm not going to say it's a great movie. It was for popcorn. It was entertaining,
Right.
but it was a really interesting look at that. I've actually questioned that a lot. I actually started writing a novel, a whole like trilogy on that concept of having a very, villainous big bad who has been known to be horrible for a millennia, but there's actually something there that he's doing that is, or at least he sees as good. It could be good, but he has to do horrendous things to get there.
Right.
So
Awesome.
interesting. Love it.
Yeah, that's very much stuff that I like to explore in my campaigns too.
Yeah.
So getting into all the moral ambiguity. Especially Vampire the Masquerade is all about that.
Right.
The
Avery.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Avery said he was in Glass Onion, and I keep meaning to watch it, and I haven't seen it yet. So, Avery, you watch Knock at the Cabin. I will watch Glass Onion. We'll meet back up next week.
Right.
All right. Okay. Sorry to cut you off.
No worries. That was my thing, and it's done. So, moving right along. What do we got up next?
Okay. We'll do this offline, but I also want to ask you about your teleprompter, because that was great. You were looking at I have such a hard time reading something and trying to look at the camera.
Right.
That's okay. We're going to talk about that. But
All right. No worries.
All right. Well, folks, we have hit the point in our show where we are going to take a little bit of a break here. We have something really interesting for you guys. There is a group called the Raven Age. If you watch this music video, I'm sure the entire music video is great, but I love the drums in this song. They're like, I don't usually curse a lot. Sometimes I do when I'm really adamant, but like they're fucking amazing. Fucking amazing. Also, we have some more music parody by Arcane Anthem. We have deception checks this time with Christine Knowlton, and we have some more bad lip reading at the end, which people seem to really enjoy. That's been a lot of fun. So stick around for the break, because once we come back, we're going to get into our topic of travel, and we have lots of stuff. Russell spent a lot of time pulling together notes, and I'll tell you, there were 33 pages of notes. 33, folks. So
at least 4 of those pages were just tables that I made.
But I was so excited to see that, and I'm like, man, how are we going to make this fit into our show? But we will. Right. So stick around, and we'll see you guys after the break.
After the break. Bye.
Hello there, adventurer. I see your interest in the vast wealth of knowledge I've acquired and stored over the years. That's fantastic. Come in, out of the sand and the sun, take a look around. It's not every day such an interesting and willing group of guests stumble upon my library. Feel free to explore. It's been years since the last group came through here, and they looked much less promising than you. I'm sure you'll find all sorts of interesting things, if you know where to look. But be warned, this library holds more than just books and scrolls, and only the worthy are allowed to leave with the knowledge that they find. So I suppose the real question is, do you have what it takes to impress me?
So Yes, hello. I'm Evelyn Dryerwood, and my sisters and I have chosen your grounds. And we would love to check on some permits and regulations to see if we can perform our ritual on your grounds. Hello?
So what do you need to do?
Oh, there's only about 7 of us. We'll be in formation, like holding hands and naked for several hours, and we'll be doing spells. Don't worry, we'll be gathering some herbs from the property and trapping some small animals.
Sure.
Oh, excellent. Say, now, are you available for the ritual?
Oh, you're damn right I am.
Oh, this is amazing. I love your positive energy. We won't need to do cleansing on you. Or maybe we will. But we will need you to take off your shirt and bathe in pig's blood. Are you willing to do that?
By cleansing, do you mean a sponge bath?
Oh, we can definitely do that. Oh, we can definitely do that. Oh, you are being so open. Yes, I love your energy. Goggle the sky in the blink of an eye. Take his shirt off or he will die. But don't worry, we will bring you back to life. Don't be silly.
Sounds great.
Oh my goodness. You are really into this ritual, aren't you?
But yeah, of course.
And the sponge baths. Oh, we will all be taking sponge baths together.
Sounds even better.
Don't worry, you will be surrounded by 7 beautiful women.
Okay.
Thank you so much. We will be in touch.
All right. I have a feeling this is one of my friends, and I love you for these phone calls.
Thank you, and have an excellent day.
All right. You too.
Who are you? What do you think you're doing here? Ships, you say? Well, sure, there's wrecked ships all over these icebergs. And yes, we may have had a hand in it, but I assure you it is all for a good cause. It is all to feed the demon of the icebergs, of course. It is our holy duty to do so. And although it may come at a cost, well, for those other people, we have been entrusted with this task and shall see it done by whatever means necessary. Thinking to stop us? Good luck. Oh no, not because of us. Because of the demon itself. Oh, do you feel that? Now you've done it. She must be waking. And I bet she's hungry. Travel to the frigid setting of the Guardian Icebergs and more unique settings from the world of Inaron. Follow our socials to keep up to date on all upcoming projects.
Have all the mind players come to light. Tentacle faces, ionic blight. Harvest the patrons, a crew, it's time to idle. Suck out your mind. High intellect, what do they have to gain? Illithid servant, the elder brain. Calling the weak that they find like time to idle. Suck out your mind.
Addicted to the way your mind is played right there before me. I'm an aberration creeping in the underdark, just lurking. I share everything with elder brain. We speak with telepathy, lawful evil. Eat your brain. I drop your HP down to nothing.
Show me what's inside your mind, behind that pretty face. I can't dominate monsters, but they take once a day.
And you can lead your parties to me, make them wish they fled. I'm in their heads, inciting dread, and now they're wondering.
Wondering.
Freezing.
Yeah, I could tell. They popped up.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's freezing.
Today my rabbit went to the hospital. Little Dougie.
Well, he's dead then. You know, not to be weird, it's just expensive. They're not gonna just fix your boring rabbit. Sorry. But it's okay, he'll make great meat. Maybe this weekend I'll make stew.
Whoa, oh
No, wait, I need your hairspray!
Oh no. Oh. I ran over a gummy bear.
You want pizza?
Now?
Well, we could play checkers for money. It's neat how, you don't have really big boobies. It's cool. When I was in jail, there was this guy that messed around with his glove.
Okay, dude, I'm gonna find some bugs and we're gonna fight.
I'm not good looking. I was just kidding. Yeah, I am. I gotta get to the bathroom, alright? It's the soul food.
It's tacos and Big Red, huh? Really?
It's the meat.
The porpoise meat?
I think so.
Hey, stickers are embarrassing.
Maybe we don't need your fancy
Well,
words.
there's dwarves. Absolutely cute dwarves.
The kind that won't stick around?
I need an earwig.
A what?
An earwig? It's like a rotten potato that two people flip. Seriously, we could use it.
Oh, well, no, you can't.
Yeah, well, we got y'all's toothbrushes, so it's like, Viva la Toothy. So anyway, will you shave my back? I wonder who shaves you.
I do?
Even like the front patch?
Yeah, a bit.
Sweet.
need my Christmas present.
I didn't buy it yet.
But you said you...
I know, but I'm like so wasted. No, wait. I got you a present. You can frisk me. And then you have it. I do like a knife egg. And you baked me a cookie. But I see that you like tweaker Mexican girls. And fine dining.
Fish breasts! Little pig, little pig. Chinaman.
You're a freak, I bet.
Well, you're a makeout walrus, so...
No, I'm a sugar baby for rabbits.
Oh.
And walruses.
We're back.
Here
we are, everybody. We are getting ready to talk about travel in tabletop role-playing games. So I hope you guys have your popcorn, you're comfy, you've gone to the bathroom, cob squat, get comfy, because we got tons to talk about.
You certainly do.
We certainly do. 33 pages worth of stuff to talk about.
Right.
I'm just not going to lie. I don't know if I'm going too far with that. I just loved it. I loved opening that document and going, whoa.
Oh my God. Have you actually read it?
The whole thing? No, although I did skim a lot of it.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Yeah. So, okay, folks, let's talk about travel, because travel, I mean, you tell me, I've really only got experience with D&D, but I think of any tabletop role-playing, travel is kind of essential. It's going to happen. Right? In just about any game. So you need to know a little bit about it. You need to understand either the mechanics or, as a DM, how you want to run it, because there are various iterations of how to manage travel.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And it allows your players to it gives them the opportunity to explore, to discover, to have that downtime that we talked about in the previous episode, have some campfire talk. There's encounters that you can have while you're traveling that you wouldn't have in the city.
Right.
Yeah. So,
and there's lots of different types of travel too. How do you travel is a big question, and where you're traveling and who you're traveling with and why. These all affect the kind of travel and how you might run your travel.
Right.
And are you a player or a DM? Because there are different implications as well.
Right. And so that's actually a good point about whether you're a player or DM, because I think the number one thing I saw when I looked up travel and what was in a lot of your notes was mapping and navigation, right? And this might be more for the old player. No, I don't want to say old players, but the longtime players, because I remember in 3.5 that my DM 3 and 3.5 that my DM was like, "No, I'm not giving you a map. I'm going to explain to you what your terrain looks like. I'm going to tell you that you have a left or a right or a head, and you guys,
north and south,
you guys map this out." And I remember thinking it was kind of interesting, because it really left it up to our skill to determine if we could find our way back out of wherever we were in. If we didn't map something correctly, if we didn't notate that there was a moving wall over there, or that there was a teleporting sigil over here that accidentally teleported us to this other area, like if we didn't notate those things correctly, we were shit out of luck. Our DM was not going to give us a battle map and say and give us a visual. So mapping was very important.
It used to be the same way. Mapping for dungeons too was a thing. You'd have to listen to the DM. They would tell you about the room, and you'd write down your notes: 10 foot by 10 foot, 30 feet west, blah blah blah, you would take those notes and draw your own map on grid paper.
Right.
And fuck me if you got it wrong.
Yeah.
So which is extraordinarily easy to do. And then there's the complexity of the communicating between the DM and the players. So,
right.
So much that can go wrong.
That's where I think, a lot of the problem lied sometimes was that he thought he described something and
Right.
he didn't, or like we misinterpreted how he described it. So then it wasn't until like 30 rooms later that thing that he said, oh no, wait, it wasn't that. And now we're going back and forth and arguing and there's confusion. So I can see there's
Right.
kind of a pro and con to that. I would say for those of you that like doing it that way, just, I don't know, maybe use Chat GPT to help you with your descriptions, or, just be very clear.
Actually, yes.
Yeah, on what your players are seeing so that they don't get confused if they're having to map out the lay of the land.
Right.
The other thing, which I never actually got to do, but this sounds really interesting, is I guess it's called hex crawling. And that's like
Right.
when you have the whole world map and like this
Yep.
hex has forest, but this hex has mountains and stuff. I can almost see it like, what's that? Settlers of Catan board game. They're like little hexagonal shapes, and this is the ocean, and this is the mountain, and this is land. And
Right.
so my understanding is that players would have like a hexagonal.
Well, that's
blank
kind of what
map.
we're doing at the moment in our Burning Path campaign.
Is it?
As Avery will tell you, we're hex crawling across some mountains at the moment, from one side of the mountains to the other. And, in this campaign, we're using time. We're skipping through time. You go through 3 squares, nothing happens. 3 hexes, nothing happens. Now you're at camp. Are you taking watches? Who's on watch? Blah blah blah. And then I made some tables to create campsites and stuff, which are in that document. Funnily enough.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're doing at the moment, and it's a different type of game in a way. It's obviously not political. You're in the wilderness. You're dealing with random encounters, so to speak. Encounters are never random. But
So now let me ask: is the hex crawling? Do your players have the map and they know that if they're going to this hex, it's forest, or is it like for them it's a blank hex map, and now when they go to this hex, now they know it's forest, and now they can draw in a little forest to know that this area
So we're using Roll20 for this particular campaign. They have the basic map, which does have forests on it. It's got mountains, forests, roads. No, actually, it doesn't have roads, but it does have lakes and rivers, obviously the edges of continents and islands and so on. And we're zoomed right the fuck in. So I've in fact cut out certain maps and zoomed in on them. So they're quite significantly close to the terrain.
Okay.
And they can draw on that map, anything that they note, and I can draw on it too. So I can add to it.
Okay.
They've got a token that represents their group, and they can move that across the hexes as they go.
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of how it's working for the moment.
So like, would they note like there's a landmark on this in this area, so they would like mark the hex or something, or what are they marking?
They could do that. They haven't done that at this point, but they could easily do that. There are towns and town names and stuff like that, and in some places there are settlements that don't have names because they haven't reached them yet.
Right.
Or I'll just say to them, you don't know the names of these places. They're on the map, but
right.
They're good enough players that they can handle that. The sort of tiny little bit of metagaming is not difficult for players usually.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's good metagaming, not bad metagaming, which we talked about a while ago.
I really like that idea of giving the players kind of this like blank map so that as they go from hex to hex, you can now describe the scenery and they can notate, and they're creating their own world map in a sense after a while.
Well,
I like
what
that.
you can do is you can put a fog of war on the map. So that as they move their token across the map, it uncovers a path that they've seen, right?
Yeah, I do love that fog of war function on online maps too, as well. Yeah.
I'm not actually using that on this. I probably should think about that. It's not a bad idea.
So for those of you who don't know, if you play online, most online maps have this fog of war function that kind of hides any areas that you want to hide, so the players can only see what you allow them to see. So just want to make sure everyone knows that.
yeah, set it up so that they have, distances of eyesight and what have you, and as they move, that much space gets uncovered and so on.
Right.
I use it for interiors a lot, but I don't really use it for exteriors, which I don't know why. I
Yeah.
never really thought about it.
Interesting. It's funny. I remember in the beginning of my DM journey that I didn't use Fog of War at all, but then I would go to the game that I play in where, my DM has been doing this for much, much longer. And I remember that there was just this level of anxiety when it's like, you're traveling and he literally will only describe what we can see between 30 to 60 feet. So that there's something ahead.
Right,
You're
beyond
just
that.
waiting to encounter it. So I learned from that and was like, yeah, okay. They can't see they can't see this whole 200-foot
Yeah.
map. Like,
and that's why I love using my this thing here, this guy. It's got squares on it, and it's got hexes on the inside, on the other side. And you're drawing it with wet erase markers, and it's a huge map. It covers a whole freaking table, and it's one of the best things I've ever bought for DMing, at least for face-to-face stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can just draw it out as they go, and you measure out how far can you see. Well, this is what you can see. You just draw what they can see.
Right.
And that's fun.
Now, since we're talking about your map, have you ever drawn out the whole thing and then just covered it so that they can only see what they can see? That way it saves you the time of drawing it in the moment.
Have I done that? I feel like I have, but I honestly can't remember a situation. I don't remember doing it. I've certainly played in a game recently. It was Vecna Must Die at a convention where the DM did exactly that, and he had like Dwarven Forge shit up the wires. With
just
LED.
Had it covered with like paper or something.
Yeah, he had pieces of cloth over sections of it, whole sections of it, and then you take off the cloth for each room as we moved through it, which was cool. Very expensive, but very cool. And it does have the side effect of, and the thing about miniatures and maps and stuff is it has that side effect of turning it a little bit into a board game.
Yeah,
takes it away from the theater of the mind and the role playing, and it makes it everyone is focused on the map suddenly,
right?
And that defines the details instead of your words, and it can be more or less atmospheric. It depends on the imagination of the players too. The more imagination they have, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. So Avery said this is one reason Russ doesn't like Twilight clerics.
Why?
I'm curious now too.
Oh well, they can grant dark vision to people, and they have long distance dark vision, and they can fucking fly too at level, what is it, 5 or something? I can't remember how.
Really? That's a low level.
Yeah, they've got a pretty low level flying ability. It's not amazing. It's slow and it can only work in dim light or darkness, I think. So it's like you can't fly in daylight, but okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All righty.
Anyway,
okay,
more
so
about traveling.
Yeah, we talked about just in general, just maps and having people, notate. But let's talk about some of the other stuff with travel, right? The important things to consider. The terrain that they're traveling in, you mentioned, and movement speeds, which can be dictated by the type or the type of transportation you're taking. Even like it's almost like this is one of those topics where if you pick a section, you can kind of just start quickly branching out. So we'll try to be as direct as possible. But so terrain.
Right. Well, I mean, that's right. So obviously you've got cities and dungeons, and we're not really counting dungeons in this case. That's not really travel. You're in a place, but traveling through a city or across a farmland or in treacherous mountains or icy treacherous mountains, or an icy treacherous mountain crevasse during a fucking storm. These are all effects that are going to change the travel and the travel time and potential encounters and all of that sort of stuff. And then there's the fact, like, you could be walking, you could be on a donkey or a horse, you could have a cart, you could be on an ice skiff, some kind of boat thing with skis on it to go across the ice lake with a sail. That happens in Dragonlance, at least in the books. You could be on the back of a flying dragon, or a magic carpet. There are different ways to travel, and we're not even counting teleportation and circles and stuff like that, because obviously that's instantaneous.
Right.
So yeah, lots of different ways to travel.
That really impact, how quickly they're going to get there, and if something happens or other encounters.
Right. And then there's the sort of equipment that you will need as you travel. So depending on how you're traveling, if you're on a ship, for example, you're going to need nautical equipment and probably fishing gear and stuff like that. If you're climbing through the mountains, as my players know, they need ropes and climbing kits and pitons and fun stuff like that. So thinking about what you would typically need to do a thing. Now, I actually broke down all these different locations and types of terrains into what you would need for these types of terrains, what would be good suggestions for players to have under those situations. Useful travel items and inventory like rations and water skins and bedrolls and tents, healing potions, pretty useful, maps for cartography and paper for writing, first aid kits, unless you've got a cleric with you, satchels and backpacks, grappling hooks, journals, quite useful, so you know where you've been and you can write about it. And who knows, you might write the next Volo's Guide to Monsters in your travels. The appropriate clothing that you might need.
I will say, I'm going to cut you off with the clothing. My DM is known for, like, if we don't prepare the proper clothing, if we're traveling somewhere that's cold or somewhere that's really hot or what have you, then exhaustion up the wazoo, because we're super cold and we're freezing, or we're dying of heat and we're sweating. Clothing, important.
Right. Sturdy boots and footwear, headwear, hats, hoods, scarves, gloves, undergarments, heat-resistant clothing, waterproof gear like coats or ponchos during the rain, capes and cloaks. Did I mention that? Blankets. Appropriate documents for traveling. Right? You might need, depending on what world you're in, but you might need some sort of documentation, something similar to, if not a passport, identification papers, some kind of permit. You might need some sort of quest contract or legal agreement allowing you to get into the Forbidden District, for example. A treasure manifest, map notes, coded messages, contracts, deeds. You might be traveling to a location where you have a deed to the location. Marked bounties, historic scrolls, so on and so forth. There's a lot of stuff to cover.
So aside from all the stuff that you got to think about, like bringing and preparing, you got to know. We talked about the terrain, like where are you going? Are you going somewhere cold, somewhere hot? Are you going on a boat for 2 weeks? Are you, are you going to the plane of air? Like, you need to prepare for that if you can't fly.
Or the plane of fire.
The location, and then also the method of travel, because you could be walking, you could be on a mount. Like you said, you could be flying on a dragon. Now, real quick, going back to walking, which would probably be like when you're starting out in the campaign, you're low level, you don't have a lot of resources, so you're going to walk to your next location. My DM was very strict about whoever had the slowest walking speed, that is the fastest that you can all travel, or else you're going to lose that one person. And so that always it was so annoying until we got to higher levels where we could figure out a better way to travel. Like if we had a gnome with us and they could only travel 25 feet, but everyone else is 30, 40 feet, we're like, come on.
Oh God. Yeah. Tedious.
So, yeah.
You could carry the gnome.
Yeah, we did sometimes.
Weather is a big thing.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
weather and terrain. Because, extreme weather or extreme terrain can slow you down. You could even maybe as a DM have it speed you up. Like what if there was a raging river and you could just glide down the raging river to get to your destination? I don't know.
Right. There might be some hazards involved. You might destroy your boat by accident, but yes, I totally agree. Sandstorms can be fun.
Natural, environmental hazards we talked about, swamps. I've never played a game where there was like a hurricane or a tornado. Like that needs to happen,
Oh,
I think.
really?
I'm gonna throw that in
Yeah,
my game soon, I think.
you should do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Um let's
And
see.
there's also opportunities in these situations for drama. You know, obviously hurricanes are quite dramatic in and of themselves, but here's an opportunity for the players to cooperate and adapt using their skills and abilities to think outside the box and innovate. They can tie themselves to trees or rocks or dig a hole or stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, I remember one game where I had some players, it was a vampire game, and they were going through some very treacherous, icy terrain in Norway, actually, or in Scandinavia. And one of the characters, who was this artiste named Philippe Gratiano, um, he had a shovel, and he dug himself a hole to sleep in because they're vampires, because he couldn't earth meld like the other character could. So she could just go pop into the earth, and that was one of her powers, but he had to dig a
Wow.
hole. By the time he'd finished digging his hole, I'd made some checks to see what the weather was like, and it had started raining, and he started crying. It's like, there's water in my hole. It was so miserable. It was
Oh, that's
hilarious.
amazing.
One of those moments.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. Um, what was I gonna say? Oh, we were talking about if you travel by ship. Now I've seen this. I've seen a few. I think it was Unearthed Arcana. There is a PDF you can find online that gives you the whole breakdown for the rules of how fast different ships like. It's not just even one travel speed. Like you can get
Right.
various different types of boats and ships, and they travel at different speeds, and they
Different
hold
speeds, right.
a certain amount of people, and
Cargo.
there's certain amounts of jobs for people to do. So your party even could take on a job
Right.
on the ship and be a
And
navigator,
they have
or
to.
yeah, they might have to. So that adds another level of like some kind of an encounter, or some way that you can make the travel interesting by giving them jobs on a ship.
Right.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Let's see. We talked about mounts. Oh, mounted combat. Have you done anything with mounted combat?
A little bit. I really like the idea of mounted combat, and D&D
It's
doesn't
not
give
great
you.
for that.
It's
Yeah.
not great for that. And when you think about, I mean, when I think about D&D, I think about fantasy. I think about like knights on fucking horses,
Yeah.
and there's really no strong, good system for that. You kind of get, there's like a charge attack thing if you've got a feat. There's certain things that allow for it, but it's not really well crafted or really integrated into the game, and I think it should be.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I the thing about mounted combat is obviously your movement speed is way faster.
Right.
And I did read at one point that you could use your horse, your mount also gets a bonus action and an action. So they can actually, the mount can choose to take the dodge action. So you can always be dodging on a
Yeah.
mount, which gives you, obviously everything has disadvantage to hit you if you're on a mount.
Right.
And I feel, I mean, one of the things that D&D also doesn't sort of address is the idea of high ground.
Mm-hmm.
High ground should give you advantage on things. So if you're on a horse, you should totally have advantage to attack anything that's on the ground, I feel.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Or at the very
so,
least, maybe they have disadvantage on you because they're
Yeah.
having to aim up, you know?
Yeah,
I don't
and
know.
I think that's where the horse's dodge action kind of comes in, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, exactly. There should be something like that. But I like it, but I haven't really gotten to use it in any really deeply satisfying way yet.
Yeah, neither have I, and I think I'm sad about that now. So I might have to find some ways to add some mounted combat into my games. Because,
Right.
if you're going to fly, let's talk about not horses. What if you're flying like a giant eagle? Like, how
Right.
cool would combat look and feel? Like, your party would be so ecstatic to be in battle while on a flying eagle, I think.
Right,
I don't
right.
know.
Well, I mean, so yeah, I mean, the first thing, of course, is that you're in a 3D terrain, right? So
Mhm.
you got you're going to be slower flying up than flying down.
Right.
You can do things like, dive bombing people either on the ground, picking them up, dropping them, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But there's always a very serious risk of falling too.
Yeah, that's true.
In fact, I did recently make up a document for, what was it? Rearing, training, and flying griffins. And I
Awesome.
present it as an elven text as well. So it's actually an elven text that's about this stuff, which players might potentially find at some point.
Fun.
So yeah, and then they have to find some griffin eggs to rear, train, and raise, and learn to mount and fly, and
Because
potentially
teaching
fight.
an adult griffin would not
Not go well, I
not go
suspect.
well.
Yeah. So I've been
That's
working on that, and maybe and some rules for it. So
yeah. That's
yeah.
cool.
And traveling also can include things like chases too.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
when you're
true.
being pursued, you might travel a bit harder. That might incur more exhaustion.
Yeah. That's funny when you mentioned chase. My first thought was like chase scenes like when you're in the city and like someone stole
Uh,
something from you and now you're trying to chase them down in the city. And that's like a very
yeah,
small scale, immediate kind of a
right,
chase
right.
scene. And then it
As
took me a
opposed
minute
to
to realize what you're talking about, which is like, yeah, you're chasing across country or
right,
something,
or
across
continents or
land,
something. Yeah.
across continent. That
Well,
is, yeah.
yeah. I read a science fiction book. Guy's name escapes me, but it was about this space chase between two ships traveling from one star to another, and they were both flying at close to light speed. And it took them, it was like a 20-year chase scene to
Wow.
fly from one place to the other. And during that chase, both sides came up with all these ingenious tactics to get away or speed up or slow down. They only had to knock the other one off a few degrees to send them off an entirely different route that would,
Oh, wow.
destroy the chase.
Yeah.
So it was great. It was really cool, but it was this really long, drawn out section. It was like a whole chapter of the book,
Yeah.
just about how they did this, and it was fascinating. The guy that wrote it was an astronomer or something, so he really had some great ideas about it. Anyway, so that's another
Yeah.
sort of way it can go. It can be a really slow, difficult chase.
Yeah.
Um, the
I
whole
was
story would be a chase with the
Yeah, no,
climax.
that's the thing. Yeah, I think players get really creative when they're put in a situation like that that's so tense, like a chase, where they know
Mm,
that, one little action could almost determine, the outcome.
right.
My DM did this. It's funny, I hadn't really thought about it as a chase until now. But we had this encounter where we were on an airship traveling
Right.
at standard airship speed, and then out from by and we were in the plane of air, so there's a lot of like floating islands and things like that, and out from behind a floating island came this other big, like much bigger than us, airship, and we knew that to be like that's like the black pirate, like that's the thing that you stay away from. But it's such a big ship and it's moving slowly that we were like, oh, that's fine. No big deal. Well, then these bay doors open and these really small, fast ships come out and they're coming after us. And now we're like, oh shit.
Shit.
And so the whole point of that
It's like the Death
encounter
Star.
was that like those little ships were coming out to try to slow us down so that the big ship could catch up. And so
Right.
it was a matter of how do we speed ourselves up, or how do we destroy
Right.
the little ships, or how do we
Right.
slow down the big ship? Like there was this whole layer
Right.
to the encounter that was really so fascinating. It
Yeah,
was
and you
great.
bring magic into that too, because you can. We recently had in Dagdagia, we had this situation where the characters were on a boat. They had to sink another boat, which they ultimately did with tidal waves and alchemist's fire and so on. But the weather conditions and the direction of the wind and all of this stuff goes into this. It's all, there's a lot of factors, and trying to keep track of them all as a DM is notoriously difficult. But
Yeah.
make a checklist. So I should have made a checklist for that, actually, for that particular scenario. But anyway,
So
yeah.
on that note, I mean, we were kind of talking about encounters, and I know you mentioned
Mm.
in that document that you had, and you can find this kind of stuff anywhere, are like random encounter generators, or
Yeah.
you can find tables for, if you're traveling in the jungle, here's a list of encounters. If you're traveling on sea, here's a list of encounters. If you're traveling in the air, if you're traveling on the mountains, like, you can find tables for just about any land type, or whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
Words escaping me. I
Well,
can speak
the
English.
DM's guide has a bunch of tables in it for this type of stuff.
Right.
Most adventures that you get will have, random encounter tables in them. You can make your own. You can use ChatGPT, which is fantastic for that sort of thing too.
Right.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've found difficult with traveling is like because the characters could take any route, so they end up camping somewhere. And so I've got sort of two ways of dealing with that now. And I've sort of a mixture of the two. I think a hybrid version is probably what I'll end up with. One way is that you get the players to describe their campsite, and then you take on what they tell you. So you say, okay, well, where do you make your campsite? Tell me about your campsite. And they will be like, okay, it's under a overhanging rock face, so they can't come around us. And we've got our fire covered and blah, blah, blah. And there's a tree here and there's a log over there. And they go into the details of it. And then you take that on board. And if there is a random encounter, then you're going to have to deal with their scenario, which is kind of fair because they're choosing where they're going to put their thing. But at the same time, you can modify it and say, well, there aren't really any trees in this region, or something like that. So you have an opportunity to not necessarily dictate it, but certainly influence it and affect it, and shape it a little bit about what resources they might have available. And the other thing I did more recently, which I'm still playing with, is I went into ChatGPT and I said, make me a list of different locations for campsites where they might be. So all the terrains, I had a bunch of different terrains. Then I got it to make me a 20-sided dice, a D20 table for each of those terrains. For the first thing was, hang on, where does it go? I'm still looking at chase locations. Where's my campsite's gone? Here we go. Okay, so terrain types like forest, mountain, desert, coast, plains, grasslands, swamps, marshes, canyons, tundra, jungles, underground caverns, Arctic glaciers. So you can, volcano fields, crystal caves, enchanted forests, abandoned ruins, the astral plane, the Feywild, elemental plane, So depending on what you're doing, you might not want to roll on that table. You obviously more than likely already know what terrain you're in. So then you roll campsite features. So you could roll a D20. You're going to get something like a clearing with a freshwater stream, or a cavern or rocky overhang for shelter, or a hidden enclave among dense vegetation. Some of these are more or less useful for different terrains. Then you can roll some natural elements to add to that, like wild flowers or glowing crystals or ancient vines and so on. These are all different tables. So what you do is you roll in on like maybe 3 or 4 different tables to create a composite of images and ideas to put into a brand new campsite. And you can get that GPT to do it for you. So you just say, give me a campsite. And it goes and uses all of that information to spit out something. You say, make it more realistic. And it does. So
I do like that. I had never thought to have my players describe the campsite to me, though. I think that kind of invests in them a little, like, or that's not the phrase. They are invested more in.
Yeah, they get invested in the campsite. It's whenever you can get the players to describe something, I reckon it's a good idea. It certainly does exactly that. They have to engage and they want to. So, and then they get to show you how they're going to use that tactically to their advantage.
Right. I'm going to do that. I like
if you have an encounter, at least. So. It shouldn't necessarily signal an encounter to them, though. You don't want to use it so often that they immediately go, oh, there's going to be a fight.
Yeah, so I'm going to describe, like, the best hidden campsite ever. Yeah.
Right.
All right. So the other thing that we should think about, besides terrain and where they're resting, is time tracking, especially if they're, we're traveling for 2 weeks to this location.
Right.
You know, random encounters we've talked about this before, like something could slow them down, something could speed them up. Their 14 days of travel could get extended to 18 days. It could somehow, maybe something happens and now it only takes like 10 days.
They find a shortcut through the mountain.
They find a shortcut, yeah. But that's also the time when, you know, they can do their rests and recovery, and you can see about giving them exhaustion or some kind of penalties if they're, you know, if they've experienced something extreme or, yeah. So,
right.
You know, the other thing with time tracking and travel is I played a session once where it was something like we were racing to get to this one tower in this one town because there was some prophecy that on the eclipse this tower would show us something, and we only had like 3 days to get there, and it was like a 5-day trip. So we were like, how the hell can we make up this time so we can get there on the 3rd day during the eclipse? And so
skip meals.
Right. So yeah, time tracking can be really important. It could also play a fun factor in the encounter if you give them something interesting to race to.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing about it is like if you need to know how fast things move and how far things are from each other as a DM, you know, like, so I mean, I had to look up how far can the average person walk per day. So it's about 20 to 30 miles per day, you know, all things being equal in flat terrain. So if a person can work 20 to 30 miles per day, when you're setting up your hexes on your map, and you might want to keep it really simple and say that a hex is about a day's travel. You know, that's a simple way of doing it. A hex per day would make sense.
Yeah.
Or you can set it up as sort of 10 miles per hex or 50 miles per hex or something like that. So, you know, depending on how you want to scale it and what makes sense to you, knowing how fast they walk or move is important because you know how far cities are from each other.
Right.
And how long it takes to get somewhere. That's going to change a lot of stuff. Everything from how much provisions you're going to need, and you know what are you likely to find on a ship that's traveling from A to B instead of C to D. You know, they're going to have different things on board. They may even be different types of ships. You know, that type of stuff. So
yeah, that's something I wish I'd done when I started this homebrew campaign, because it's a homebrew map and I hand drew everything, and so I have a vague understanding of how long it takes to get from one place to another. But when, and you know, like I have main roads, like the Queen's Road kind of thing. But when they cut corners and they're like, well, we're going to go directly from here to here. And my brain's like, how do I calculate how far that is? I wish I'd done something like a hex map on top of it or something so that I could, now what I do is I just take a ruler and I kind of compare it to areas that I know how long it takes.
Right. That's a good way of doing it. I mean, I've done similar things too, to be honest.
Yeah.
This is a map I made of my world a while ago. And this is the map that I redrew this in Incarnate. And now it's all colored and textured and beautiful.
Yeah, that's nice.
And it has hex grids. So, and I started off with a hand-drawn paper drawing of it at the beginning on a piece of grid paper.
Wow.
And yeah, it's had a number of different incarnations. So over about 5 or 6 years, it's gone from a hand-drawn picture to this almost professional looking thing, which, I can't show you right now. But anyway.
Let's see. We talked about provisions and supplies. I mean, you gave a pretty comprehensive list there, but...
right, and there's more of that, way more.
Yeah. So going back to, provisions, supplies, and time tracking. So we had this interesting encounter where we ended up in the Shadowfell, and it was our first experience in the Shadowfell. And I don't know if this was a homebrew thing, because I've never played any of the modules. No, I don't want to say I've never played, but I haven't played that module, what's that main module where everyone's in the Shadowfell and there's the Dracula guy?
Oh, Curse of Strahd?
Thank you. Curse of Strahd. My brain just would not remember it. So, but when we were in the Shadowfell, I remember that our DM was telling us, like, it didn't feel like that much time was passing. And yet, one of the characters who we knew to be fairly portly was losing weight. and we could not figure out what was happening. We were eating everything we were supposed to be eating. We had plenty of, rations, and it finally dawned on us after we'd been in the Shadowfell for a while that like we were actually there for much, much longer than we knew. And so
Right.
what we thought when we thought we were eating at a regular interval, we were actually not. And he was wasting away. It was
Right.
wild. So something to consider when you're talking about provisions and supplies and time tracking is, managing that.
Right, and in fact, when you're doing a hex crawl or another kind of any sort of travel like that, that was one of the few times when I will consider things like encumbrance and provisions. Otherwise, I assume that you're not over encumbered and that you have provisions if you're in a
Right.
city. Another thing on that note, though, there are certain ethical dilemmas and moral choices that you may be forced into. Say, for example, you're in the desert and you run out of food.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do now? Who gets to draw the short straw and hand over their character's left arm for the next meal? So there are some interesting stuff like that. And also that can happen with people that you meet and so on. Obviously, traveling is a great opportunity to drop NPCs and sprinkle all different varieties of NPCs.
Sprinkle a very tasty looking NPC.
Right. Right, exactly. And it's very unpredictable, and you can go right off plot with your travel. You don't have to stick to your main storyline here as an opportunity to bring in sort of non sequiturs,
Right.
so to speak.
Yeah. The other thing, if we're talking about like hex crawls and things like that, is the ability for the party to navigate. If they don't know where they're going, I've seen several times in various games that, they get lost. And now they thought they were heading in a straight line, but really they took a right turn at Albuquerque and now they're in the mountains and they're confused, so that's a way you can manage their travel and maybe have them do some navigation checks.
Well, see, on that note, interestingly, my players in Dagdagiel and the Burning Path, last week they asked me, do I know the best way to get to so-and-so? And I said, yeah, probably you do. And so I started describing the route that they were taking. And then in the interim between sessions, I did all these freaking maps, right? And I realized, fuck, this is not the fastest way. They're not going the fastest way. They should have taken a ship.
Mm-hmm.
That would have made a lot more sense. And so I talked to them about it before the game, and we kind of agreed. And I blessed them. They were so cooperative. They could have easily just said, fuck you, you screwed this up, fix it. And they didn't. They worked with me to help me get through it. They came up with all sorts of great excuses and ideas about why they didn't get a boat.
Mm-hmm.
And they were good ideas too. Some of them, and they ranged from, people are looking for us to weather stuff, all kinds of different reasons. It was good. And so thusly they're doing it a different way. But if I had only had that map done in advance, I would have known.
Right.
And I would have given them better ideas and answers about that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Let's see. What else?
Experienced guides are useful. Having a guide.
Yeah, I've actually seen that in some other games. I haven't used it in my game for them to have a guide yet, but
these guys just picked up a guide. They have a ranger guide who in fact is a bit of an alcoholic, but he's the only one that knows the way. So they're trying to keep him off the booze while they travel through the mountains.
How's that going?
Reasonably well. They had an argument with him last night, actually. Alcas, they had terse words after the troll fought them, and he was like, I told you this, I told you I couldn't guarantee it was safe. And they were like, well, fucking duh. Anyway.
That's funny.
Yes.
So Avery said, plus the crab. Don't forget the crab.
The crab. What about the crab? The crab on the island. There was a giant crab on an island which one-shotted Avery's character to unconscious in one hit.
Oh my goodness.
To be fair, I mean, it was the right challenge rating for the group, and he did have a fucking paladin wearing armor up the wazoo, so he was hard to hit. But I just rolled terrible dice for him, and I one-shotted him. Oops. Oopsie. Yeah, that crab was mean. It was hiding out in an old shipwreck on the side of an island. They didn't see it when they went to the shore.
So it's probably a good reason, or good that they didn't take a ship, or else they might encounter the crab again.
Well, yeah, well, they, yeah, right. Different direction, but yes, yes. So what have we
That's
not covered here?
okay. So
Probably
let's talk
quite a
about
lot.
like some. You kind of mentioned briefly special travel abilities, like being able to teleport, or we talked about tree striding earlier. I think it was tree stride.
Right.
But what about like interplanar travel? Is it
Right.
just you think about it and you show up, or as a DM you can kind of create some travel aspects to that?
I use gates usually, portals for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
In my world, there's this Astorian network of gates that travel from various planes and also different parts of the world. And as the players, it's a little bit like Stargate. So you
Yeah.
have to go somewhere, find the gate, physically find the gate, and write down its coordinates. Then you can go back to your gate, and now you can get there. Now in fact, you can use that gate to get back to your home base.
Okay.
So there's sort of this ongoing exploration of the world by finding new gates.
That's cool.
It's a very slow process. The other thing too was like our ranger, the guide, asked the group, if they could climb and whether they had the right tools and stuff for climbing. Do they have climbing kits? Some of them did. The druid didn't, but she then demonstrated that she could turn into a bear, wild shape into a bear, and climb a tree. So bears have a phenomenal climbing speed, or at least a same speed as people can walk in
Right.
D&D. So using wild shapes to travel, not a bad idea.
Yeah, that's true.
Or possibly polymorph.
So yeah, in the game that I play in, we're traveling through the plains, but we're doing it the long way. Like we are literally walking across the plane, or not walking, we're flying across the plane of air to get to the plane of ash where it meets the plane of fire, where or what have you. Like we're actually walking, for lack of a better term, across the plains just to get to Sigil. So that's one way of travel. And you talked about portals, but there's also, I've seen games where they have, there's the planar keys. Like I think of it like Harry Potter, where you have like that one object that you touch and that will transport you to this place, or it's connected. Right. It's connected to this plane. So if you have it, now you can teleport to it. So you can even make finding the keys travel, like a travel adventure to just find the keys to get to these different planes.
Right.
Let's see.
So we haven't talked about the mechanics of travel. And to be fair, all of that stuff's pretty well documented in the DM's guide and online and so forth.
Right.
But so, foot travel, generally, you are moving obviously 30 feet per round. And how does that translate into actual grids or hexes on a bigger scale? As I said, I worked out you can travel about 20 to 30 miles on foot, all things being equal.
Yeah.
Something went beep.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah. And there's also stuff like foraging and hunting along the way when it comes to things like, because there's all sorts of things you can do while you travel. You don't have to just walk. You can also be hunting and tracking and foraging and running, jumping, climbing trees, having little side adventures by yourself.
I actually, the most fun thing recently with my players traveling is I have a character a player who wants to read this one book, and that's all he wants to do right now until he can finally get through the book. There's many hours involved. And so when they're traveling and they're walking, he's like, "Oh, I'm just reading my book." And I said, "Well, then you're not paying attention to any of your surroundings." And because of that, hilarity ensues a lot, because he's not paying attention to whether there's an encounter happening, so he gets last, in the initiative,
right, loses initiative,
or he gets hit by a tree branch or what have you, because he's just not paying attention. So you can do other things while you're traveling, for sure. You may not want to, but you can.
Not necessarily a good idea.
Yeah,
that's true. I mean, stealthing too. You might be traveling slowly because you're being careful. You don't want to be spotted.
Right.
So you might choose to go more slowly and stealthily through the forest, as you sneak up on the Orcan camp. Did my camera just fuck out again?
Oh no. Yeah.
Oh God. Okay, let's see if we can fix that.
All right.
Ah. Ah.
Yeah, so while we're on that topic of other things you can do while you're traveling, and while Russell is trying to fix his camera, you can have your characters go down a road to self-discovery kind of thing, or self-improvement if they're a character that's kind of down on their luck and maybe they want an upward arc, like have them work on something to improve themselves. You're still frozen. Or they could work on like overcoming their fears. If they even express an interest in that, maybe start tossing some encounters their way. For example, my character, I just decided one day she's afraid of ghosts, but it's not necessarily that she's afraid so much as it's like, you know, my character respects what she doesn't understand, and the supernatural is just beyond her comprehension, and it's best to avoid it than to anger it. So whenever there's ghosts or any type of enemies that are supernatural in nature, she kind of becomes afraid, even though she's a barbarian. But I started working it into their travel whenever we were encountering supernatural beings, that she would kind of do things to overcome the fear, or at least like fake it till you make it, right? She's going to rage, but deep down she's showing that she's fearful. Anyway, I hope you guys get the point. You could also have your character try to experiment. Nope, it doesn't look like that. Now we see Lumix. You could have your character experiment with new skills. If you're a follower of Critical Role, you've probably seen them. They'll get like some magic item, and instead of identifying it, they just test it out. Like you could just test some stuff out and see what it does, you know, while you're traveling. Or you level up and you have a new skill, work it into the game and the story. Hey, you're back. You're moving.
I'm back.
But work it into the narrative, like, hey, I've got this new skill, I can fly now. And instead of just all of a sudden flying and everybody accepts that as is, like, you could say that you're experimenting with flying while you're traveling.
All personnel report to the nearest tornado shelter.
Hey folks, sorry about that. We're working on this. But I am here, and hopefully Russell will be joining us shortly. I swear, the internet has it out for us. Oh, okay, here he is. We're here. You're here. We're here. Yes, Avery, Russell's tech has it out for him in particular, and I'm pretty sure it took me down with him this time.
Wow.
So let's continue, because I think we're getting to a point, where... You know, we've talked about all the things to consider when it comes to travel and like whether you're a DM or player, but I want to talk about, as the DM, there's all these different ways that you can handle travel in your game. For example, there are some folks that like that you don't want to do encounters during your travel, and the DM just wants to describe the journey and its scenery, no matter if it took a day to travel or 2 weeks to travel. They're basically just all together, either the DM or all together collaboratively going to describe what happened during the journey. It's just narration only, which I find interesting. Like, again, it kind of goes back to your players describing the campsite. Like, but now you're kind of letting your players maybe describe, okay, what happened in the 2 weeks while you traveled? Anything happen? You know, you could do that. Or as the DM, you could say, all right, you traveled for 2 weeks. You saw a cliff with this and that, and you encountered traveling people, and you saw this, and and now you see the shining walls of whatever, blah, blah, you're coming up against. So narration is one way to do it if you don't want to deal with any encounters or anything like that. I think personally having encounters adds, you know, a level to the travel, can draw it out a little bit.
Yeah. And there's opportunities for role play there around the campfire.
Right.
That type of thing. You know, the players get to know each other in those situations.
Right.
The characters.
So that's the next type of running travel would be having your random encounters, or planned. I guess we can just say encounters, that are based off of either the terrain that they're traveling in or the weather systems, or yes, Randy, gotta love random encounters. You can also, I think, if your players have done a lot of backstory, I think you can delve into their backstory a little bit to pull for encounters. Like, if you've got a character that's looking for prophetic signs, they believe in some kind of prophecy, you can put maybe there's some landmarks in the travel that they can see that might draw their interest, or if you're a cleric following a certain deity and you happen to see a temple that's meant for that deity, like, you can do a lot with their backstories, and incorporate that into the travel.
For sure. I mean, we have visions. Some of our characters had visions and dreams. They were trying to figure out the best way to go. So two of them decided to pray and sleep on it. And they actually had visions, which assisted them in their decisions as to how to move forward.
Yeah. So they use their visions to decide. Is that what you were saying?
Well, it was certainly part of it. Some part of the vision came true, so thusly they decided to follow up on it, and it turned out to be a fairly good choice. So, one of the characters is a wildfire druid, and she decided to go out and pray and meditate, and she had a vision amongst the falling autumnal leaves where one of them turned into a flame that landed in her palm of her hand, and then a vision appeared in the flame of a woodsman with an axe near a tent, and they'd just heard about this ranger, who turned out to be their guide, the alcoholic guide.
Yeah.
So they had to go and confront him and then spend the next half an hour talking him into actually being their guide, because he didn't want to leave. He'd given up on his life basically, and so they had to convince him that he still had something left in him, and 150 gold would do the trick. So yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, so Randy asks, and I'm going to answer this, and then I'll let you answer this. So he asked, do you guys prefer to do random encounter tables or improv? And I'm going to answer that with a kind of like a hybrid answer, which is I do have random encounter tables ready at any moment, just because you never know what players are going to do. However, at least because I know my players well enough by now, I tend to know at least, when they're traveling, I know the area they're going to be traveling. And I use that opportunity to throw in what my next thing is throwing in an interesting monster. Because when they're traveling, that's the time when you can throw in some interesting monster that wouldn't be in a city or wouldn't be wherever they normally would be. Now you can start throwing in. So for me, it's kind of a hybrid of interesting monster and tie-ins to backstories. If I can tie into their backstory, then I feel like that makes their travel more interesting because they're invested, because it has something to do with somebody's backstory. So, and then I'll create an interesting monster tied into that, just like the undead goats we talked about earlier.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, the thing to me is like encounters, anything that happens, right? Because I mean, I went to film school and I did like writing and directing. And so anything that's in a story typically should, basically, what am I trying to say? It needs to develop plot, theme, or character. Right. So anything that you're adding in there should develop one of those three things, or reveal one of those three things in some way. So rolling random encounters doesn't really give you any control over that. So, you can have a table, and I do use random encounters occasionally, but I personally prefer to have planned my encounters in order to reveal plot, theme, and character.
Exactly.
They may feel random. It might just be, there's, you come across a group of goblins. Well, you could just kill them, or you could find out who they are and what they're about. And you might discover there's a whole little story going on with that group of goblins. And it turns out that they've stolen the cooking stone from their village, and they're on their way to go and start their own rebellion and blah, blah, blah. And that may have something to do with your theme somehow, or something like that.
Right.
So Yeah. So, or you can find a way of using the random encounters to reveal plot, theme, or character.
Exactly.
But if they're totally random and they don't have any connection to the campaign, so it's just another fight.
Right. It's
Uh,
like, why is there a unicorn here all of a sudden? Or why, like, yeah, I like
Right.
to at least try to find
Right.
ways to tie it in narratively. Now, Randy, if you liked the undead goats, you need to, and if you weren't here for the beginning of the show, you need to hear part 1 of the show before we lost our airtime for a second, or go back a few episodes to when we world built this whole undead goats encounter, because you will enjoy that episode.
Right.
So, all right. So other ways to handle travel. We've talked about the narration. We've talked about random encounters or planned encounters. Skill challenges. I've seen people handle travel with skill challenges. That usually involves, like, can they navigate their way? Do they get lost?
Survival checks.
Survival checks. Same thing. Yeah, foraging for food, maybe even, or dealing with tracking, hunting something down while they're traveling, getting through the weather or terrain, not losing we've already talked about not losing their way. But yeah, you can handle the entire travel, whether it's from, a 1 day point A to point B, or it's 2 weeks. You can really cut down that 2 weeks in your game time to just a quick skill challenge if you wanted to.
Right.
There's time jumps, where the DM just kind of fast forwards through uneventful travel by
A montage, so to speak.
Yeah. It's we're gonna need a montage. That's what it is. I have to say it in the song beat. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's kind of like narrating, but I guess not. How would this be? I'm trying to think. What's the difference between a time jump and narration for the DM?
Well, I mean, you can say, okay, you get back to the city. Or you can say, thusly you leave the town of blah on your wagon,
Yeah.
and you travel for many days, meeting pilgrims and encountering various blah, blah, blah. And Jack gets drunk many times, and the wheel falls off your wagon, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You can draw it out. So basically how much you're going to draw it out, really.
Right.
It's like in a movie, I guess, when you can cut from the scene in America to the scene in London and then back again, or you can have the characters get on an airplane, have a montage as they go through the customs, blah, blah, blah. Here's Jack on the airplane flying for 20 seconds. Cut to,
Yeah.
how much do you draw that out?
That makes more sense. So yeah, this I think is then for the DM who's just like, yeah, I'm not dealing with travel at all.
Yeah.
We're just going to say, yeah.
I'm finding that in my campaign with the characters traveling at the moment, it is hard to keep the pace going and to narrate, to keep the story happening. It is very much in the player's hands, and they have a lot of control over that, which is good for them. They have a lot of agency, but maybe too much agency, because then they tend to dawdle.
Yeah.
And that can really slow the game down. It's not their fault. They just don't know what to do. They're presented with too many options.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's a good point. I like the way
What
that you said
we need is a railroad.
That's true. Okay, so we talked about, managing resources, but you can actually use that as a method for handling travel, is, really just kind of having everyone tick off, like, how many rations do you have left? Are you guys going to be okay? Oh, now you guys need to start foraging for food because this extreme weather happened, and now you've got 2 extra days to your travel and you only bought just enough rations. Like, you can really kind of lean into the resource management as the way to handle your travel.
I have a good feeling, I'm going to try this later, but I have a good feeling you could use ChatGPT to help you manage the resources.
Yeah.
You could tell it how much resources everybody has at the beginning, or you could get it to generate the resources in the first place and then tweak it. And then tell it how far they're traveling each day and how many days they've traveled. And every time they travel a little bit further, you can say, give me another breakdown on what resources the characters have.
You
And
know, I think that's a great idea because I think that's the reason why a lot of DMs I know that used to do this don't do it anymore because it's such
just
a
painful.
hassle. Yeah.
Yeah, it's painful. I mean, even a spreadsheet is too slow, you know. But
Yeah.
you could have a chat GPT that has, you might have the contents of your bag of holding in it, or stuff like that. So there's so much you can do with
Yeah,
it. It's
that's
ridiculous.
great.
Yeah.
Okay, travel events. Let's see. DM plans specific events or encounters that occur at certain points during the journey. Okay. So this is like instead of having a planned encounter, this is a planned
Mm,
event during the
right.
travel. So this could
Like
be like, trying to catch the eclipse during a certain amount of, or during
right.
in a certain area. Did you freeze again, Russell?
I am not
Oh,
frozen.
okay. For a
No,
second, it looked like
no,
you froze.
no. I've seen your screen doing that, but it doesn't come up on the stream. Curiously enough, I was
Oh,
going to
okay.
say things like your characters are intercepted by a festival going through,
Yeah, yeah.
or a funeral parade.
Ooh, yes. I love that. Yeah, festival. Uh, yeah, funeral procession. Oh, that's a
Right.
great one. I'm
Yeah,
trying to
I've
think
used that
what
one.
else. Yeah, Randy said froze for a moment. Okay. Um, exploration and discovery, which I think leans heavily into the hex crawl kind of a map
Right.
setup,
Yeah.
let your players just wander and the discovery part might be the thing that's really exciting for them. Like,
Right.
I just want to
You
see what
could.
landmarks are out here.
Right. You could set up a couple of hexes near each other where you could make perception checks to see into the other hex from a
Yes.
mountain or something. And if you pass that perception check, you notice the ruins on the other side of the valley,
Mm-hmm.
and then you might choose to go off track and go and explore those ruins if you felt that it was worth your time and energy,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
depending on your priorities, of course.
The travel montage, which I'm starting to wonder now. What's the difference here between we've got the travel montage, the time jump, and the narration style?
Right. Well,
Huh.
yeah, I guess in my view, the narration style is the longest version, the
Mm-hmm.
montage is the intermediate version, and the
Ah,
time jump is the cut.
that's a great way to explain it. I like that. Yes. Um, and then okay, I've seen this a couple times, like on Critical Role. I think probably on their one shots, maybe. Can't remember. It's been a while, but using board games or card games or some other type of prop to
Right.
help make travel kind of a mini game.
Right.
Um,
That's
so
cool.
there was and for those who watch Critical Role, you guys are probably going to yell at me if I get this wrong, but there was some game that Marisha ran where she used Don't Break the Ice, which is a board game. It's like plastic little ice cubes that are all shoved into this form, and then you hammer out like one of the squares and the rest of the squares will stay, but eventually when you hammer out too many squares the whole thing falls, so everyone's
Right.
standing on like a glacier, and as they're traveling, they'll have to tap out a square. And I
Oh,
think
that's
it's so good
great.
because then once they fall in, that's when like the encounter happens or something
Right.
happens. So
Right.
I think I like that. I'm trying to think if I've ever used it for something. Gosh, I feel like I've done something like it, but I actually tried to find the Don't Break the Ice for when they were up in the snow, and I couldn't. I didn't want to pay full price for it, so
You could use Jenga or
do that.
something.
Yeah, Jenga. You could use Jenga. Um, how fun would that be? Yeah, memory games. Oh my gosh, you could use like the cards where you're trying to remember which card matches with which card, and use that as like, do you remember the next area that you're supposed to head to navigate to? I don't know. There's probably
Right.
plenty of creative ways you could use other board games to help with your travel.
Yep.
Uh,
Well, I mean, the Dragonlance module, Shadow of the Dragon Queen, has a board game that comes with it if you buy the deluxe edition.
oh
And
yeah.
in the book, yeah, in the book, it's mostly for handling battles actually, but it includes travel and at different points in the campaign. It says if you have the board game that goes with it, this is you can roll these things and run this scenario, and that will affect the outcomes for your wider campaign setting. Um,
That's
so yeah,
cool.
the board game intersects with the role playing game.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I was gonna say if you've ever played, I think it's Betrayal at House on the Hill. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's not really like D&D, but they have little tiles that make up like a mansion. So
Right.
this looks like an entryway. This looks like a hallway. This is one room that has 2 doors. This is one room that has 1 door. And so like you could even use something like that to kind of help dictate like what they're seeing and what they're coming up against.
Right.
And that's a fun, oh man, okay, I could just keep going on and on about that game. That's a real fun game. Uh, and let's see. So yeah, and then fast travel, we've talked about, bypassing the long travel and they can tree stride or teleport or whatever. But, I kind of like the idea of finding ways to at least narrate and draw that out a little bit so it feels more
Right.
like travel. It's not just I cast it
Right.
and I'm done. Like,
Yeah, and I haven't looked at the spell for tree stride for a while. I can't recall whether or not there's like distances involved, um, or whether only certain types of trees or something like that, or that there might be some mechanics to that in there that you can exploit in some way in order to slow it down.
right.
And so maybe you're trying to tree stride from A to B, but you've got to go through various points to do it and spend X number of spell slots. You might have to rest
Right.
during that process, and during those rests, you could have encounters,
Yeah.
or mysteries, or side quests, or whatever.
Yeah. Don't quote me rules as written, but I know because Critical Role did it a lot that what they did was you have to have a tree that's big enough to have a doorway that's big enough for you to get into.
Right.
And of course it has to be a tree that like whatever tree you're going to has to be a tree that you've seen before or that you know.
Right.
So yeah, that's actually been helpful because one of my players has tree stride, and for a while, like they were coming across just like thin trees, and I'm like,
Right. So they
you can't
couldn't
go
do
through
it.
that.
Right.
So,
Perfect. Excellent. Yeah. One of my druids there, Druid Circle, got wiped out by the Barakyle envoy, and they were burning all of their trees.
Oh, wow. So
So
yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. Where you're going, what if the trees are on fire and you didn't even know? I
right.
love that. I'm so adding that. Okay. Cuz I mean, right now they're in the end game and the whole world is just about to die right now. So, yeah, the
Right.
trees are going to be on fire everywhere.
Right.
Okay,
Nice.
great. Well, this is great because that kind of leads us into the last and final segment of our show. Before we move on to the weekly world building, was there anything that we missed that you think we missed about travel?
I don't. Time jumps, resource management, exploration, montages, mini games, fast travel. I think we've covered most things. I mean, we haven't gotten into the deep mechanics of any of it, but as I
Yeah.
said before, I think that stuff's pretty much available.
Yeah.
And telling you online is not going to help you because you're not going to remember it. You need to look that shit up
Yeah.
or use
It's
ChatGPT.
crunchy stuff. Yeah.
It's crunchy stuff, yeah. And it's how crunchy you want your travel to be is really up to you and the DM, or the DM and you in some sort of collaborative way. And so, perhaps depending on how much of a dictator your DM is, you might be able to. Certainly, my players last night, they were like, "So how's this going to work? Are we going to be like doing it this way? And is it, how dragged out is it going to be? Can we skip from places, or are we going to?" And we kind of talked about it and discussed how it was going to work. And they wanted to make sure that they would be able to get to their location on time. So they wanted to know in advance whether or not they thought that they would be able to get there in and out of game.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Certain
That's
amount of
actually a good
negotiation.
point. I mean, yeah, talk to your table, but I would also say I think at least every once in because I know I'm bad about this. If I've done something one way and it's worked, I'm going to continue doing it that way, right? But I've noticed at least lately that I feel like the last few encounters I've had have felt a little stagnant. And or the
Right.
travel, like the last set of travel that we did kind of felt like it was rushed at the end. And I
Right.
so I'm actually considering like I need to change things up, and I'm going to be trying a few of these other methods, even though it's
Right.
not necessarily my style, because I think it's going to shake things up and it could make it really interesting and make
Right.
things alive again. So
I guess I got one other thing to add. Really, is we've talked about D&D pretty much exclusively for this video so far, and I have some experience playing Vampire the Masquerade, and travel's quite different in Vampire. And there's really, obviously, all the usual things apply in terms of you can walk and use a vehicle or a boat or a plane or what have you, and that's quite different in the sense you can get on an airplane, you can go to the airport and fly somewhere, but you're a vampire, so you don't want to be in an airplane when the sun comes up.
yeah.
Right. So you have to choose your flight times very carefully, or alternatively, and better yet, you get yourself shipped somewhere in a box somehow. These are good options. You know, driving from A to B is fine, but if you're driving from city A to city B in a car or on a motorcycle, you better have somewhere to hide for the daylight, or you better have something like earth meld in order to pop into the ground at the end of the evening, so that you're not exposed to the sun. So there's certainly things like that, and crossing faction lines while you're traveling, cultural values that may affect things as you travel, language barriers are things we haven't talked about. So yeah, different games, different mechanics, different kind of scenarios. Get involved. Space travel, that could be fun.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't even talked. I mean, we did kind of talk about like interplanar travel, but yeah, there's those not modules. What am I thinking of? Materials for D&D where you're space jammer. You know, you're flying in a ship.
Yeah, right.
So
exactly. All right.
I do love that idea of like, oh, I can only travel for this limited amount of time though because the sun.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So scheduling that, and what happens if your plane crashes or something, you know, or if you have to walk across the fucking Arctic terrain as a vampire, not good for you. It's very hard, and digging holes is not fun.
Yeah.
You know, so
awesome.
And especially if it's icy, because the sunlight's still going to come through some of it anyway. So you have to dig long and far. Anyway, let's move on to our last section.
My world building segment is not, I don't think it's my best idea, but I did think, you know, let's kind of create, we were talking about encounter tables, and I thought I would like to create an encounter table where it's a mixed bag, right? Especially for my game where they're currently traveling in the canyon / mountainous area. So we're talking about like Red Rock Canyon, Desert Canyon, and also mountains with snow and, you know, white caps. But in this area, I would like to, let's see if we can just quickly come up with some ideas of encounters they can have. But it's not just mountains. This area has also been touched by the big bad evil, the BBEG. And so there's...
Who is this BBEG? Do we know anything about them? Because that might affect our...
Right. So the BBEG is, in my world, there are... The material plane only knows that knows that in the beginning there were two gods, of good and evil, right? Two goddesses, they're sisters, and so the good one runs the Fey realm, and the bad one runs the Shadow realm, right? And those are the only planes that this world understands. They don't understand about the other planes at all. There's just the Earth, and there's the Fey, and there's the Shadow. And now, in current day, there are other gods, but the main ones are this good and bad one. So the bad one, the Shadowfell goddess, she is trying to basically open up. She's basically trying to turn the material plane into another Shadowfell. She's trying to bring the Shadowfell into the material plane. And her dragon has this breath weapon that it basically opens portals. It basically like rips the time space, and now there's a hole into the Shadowfell. And she's recently released this dragon. So this dragon's just been flying around, ripping holes in space, and things have been pouring out from the Shadowfell wherever this dragon has been. And in this particular area where they're at, they're heading into... So the mythology goes that this goddess, when she tried to do this before, the good goddess sent her children, her dragons, those were the first dragons, to basically rain hell down on her and basically crashed onto her and created this whole mountain range, sealing her in this mountain range. So her corporeal form is in this mountain range made up of dragons that are now it's mountainous and land and stuff. So they're heading to this mountain range through a series of the Goliath mountain ranges and the Red Rock canyons and stuff. So they're heading in this area, and her evil is leaking out from this mountain range, and it's causing like a blight that's spreading across the land. And then we also have the dragon ripping holes in time and space.
This is why we have zombie goats.
This is why we have undead goats.
Right.
So
Right.
so yeah, so I thought, okay, like doing a D12 table and coming up with 3 combat encounters, 3 things they could discover, whether it's like a landmark or some kind of plot point or something, 3 fortuitous encounters, something that would either remove a day of their travel or give them some kind of a boon maybe, or just something that isn't bad, something that happens that isn't bad. And then 3 what I call complicative encounters, something that will add a day of travel or something that will make things worse. So I know we don't have too many live viewers going on, but if you guys think of anything, throw it out in the chat, and I think we're just going to start like shouting some stuff out, because obviously,
so 3 combat encounters.
3 combat encounters. We've already got the undead goats, which, by the way, real quick, I grabbed that other mini while we were on our break. So here is the standard goat. That's the image that you sent me. So that's the standard goat.
Awesome.
And then we had the giant goat.
So they're on stands.
Yeah. And then we had the mammoth undead goat. So,
oh my God, they're freaky, aren't they?
So some other combat encounters that would be in the mountains. I mean, we could do other like trolls or undead giants. I feel like there is already an undead giant.
Yeah, there are stats for undead zombie giants, I think. It's, I mean, that would definitely be a thing. And undead dragons too, potentially.
Well, that's the thing. In my world, there are no dragons.
Okay.
Because the good goddess sent all her children to seal this bad one away. So not to say that let me rephrase that. They've seen a dragon. They've seen a couple dragons. One was in the Fae, and one happened to be in the material plane, which they haven't really looked into much about that. But that was like a baby dragon. So yeah.
Okay.
So no dragons.
Well, I mean, okay, so who inhabits this area? Are we talking about, so we've got Goliath encounters, obviously.
We've got Goliaths. On the other side of the mountain range are the Dwarven Mountains.
So there could be encounters.
Dwarves.
You could have, so you want combat encounters particularly. So I tend to start encounters from the point of view of who's the culture, what are the NPCs, what do they want? Mm-hmm. And if it's going to be a combat encounter, obviously they're going to want something nefarious like gold or, blood for their sacrifices, something like that. So you could have a cult. That could be fun. There could be a cult living up in this mountain range that want the character's blood for their sacrifice to their evil deity. Or something to that effect, or possibly there's an evil giant mammoth goat that they worship as a god.
That's funny. I do like the cult. What else?
Yeah, because then you can have a settlement and some structures and some terrain that it involves as well, and some culture around that makes it interesting.
Yeah.
Then they might also have interesting treasure too.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Right.
And we don't have to necessarily come up with all 12 of these because, I know we're running late in the show, but any ideas that stand out would be, I love that.
Right. Okay. Well, that was my my attempt at a combat encounter. as for a discovery, ruins, entrances, magic items, things buried. I had a game once with the Frostmoor Crows where they'd been sent somewhere by an order called the Daughters of Twilight, and they went into the mountains looking for this portal. And when they were up there, they found a crevasse, a frozen crevasse, and they saw a glint of metal in it. So they didn't have time to explore it at the time, but they went back later, a couple of weeks later, and they dug it out, and they discovered there was a group of Daughters of Twilight, these elven clerics and paladins, who had all been frozen into this crevasse, and they'd been there for hundreds of years.
Oh, wow.
And they'd obviously been there on a mission in the past and failed. But amongst their stuff, they found some magic items and a bag of holding, and a few other bits and pieces that was useful to them. So finding a previous exploration party's corpses or remains could be useful to them, and might be interesting. You can add some lore in there about that.
And actually, I know, I was going to say, I know my husband will probably listen to this later, so I can't get in too much detail. But with regards to the discoveries, I have a few things already planned that I think they will end up finding. That'll be great.
They could discover that they're in a role-playing game.
Fourth wall broken. That's...
Okay, fortuitous encounters. So here's my idea for that. And I have to be careful too. Avery, close your ears if you're still listening, because I too have some ideas for these things. So my idea for a fortuitous encounter is that you find a passageway, an underground passageway that cuts through the mountains. Right?
Yeah.
Or at least through part of them, something like that. Having a guide might help in respect to that sort of thing. Can you hold the line a second? I just have to grab something from the door.
No problem. Yeah, that's great. I feel like I just saw something recently. I can't remember if it was a movie or something where they used the underground. Oh, this is going to drive me insane that I can't. Oh, you know what it was? I was rewatching The Wheel of Time season 1, and they were using the ways, which to me it felt like the Underdark, and like you could just go through the Underdark for like a day, but you end up somewhere like 20 days away. You shaved off like 20 days to your travel.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. You could find an underground river or something in a terrain that you thought was impassable. There might be some other way through it.
Right.
So yeah, that's. See, Avery's taking his headphones off. So
yeah.
So I mean, there might be encounters in that Underdark section,
right?
But it doesn't. It's still probably faster than going across the mountains,
right?
So that's what I'm planning for my ladies and gentlemen, who preferably are not watching right now. Yeah, Avery said, "What if your connecting flights get delayed? Have to wait for them to come back."
That's what happens a lot lately. So.
I mean, a teleportation circle would also be a thing you could find that would be fortuitous, that might skip you forward a little bit if that sort of thing happens in your world.
Yeah.
You could have an encounter with a wizard who decides to help you after you convince them that they should, because the world's about to end.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Magic item.
You could find a sigil or something that maybe like, we don't know where it goes, but if you take it.
And you can complicate these things too, because you could have like one encounter where they find something that's going to be useful to another person, but the person that it's useful to is useful to the players. So you don't give them what they need immediately. You give them something that they can trade for what they need.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So there's
like
that way you have relationships that kind of evolve out of it.
Yeah.
Okay, complicative. We still need one more fortuitous.
Oh no, that's fine. Like I said, we don't have to figure out every single one of these.
Complicated encounters, landslides, rock falls,
yeah. Oop.
Earthquakes, natural disasters.
Earthquakes, actually, that's a great idea, because before they ended up in this area, there was a great earthquake, which signified that there was one of her seals had been broken. So
Right.
an earthquake would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the good old. Well, I guess that would be going back to combat. So no, I'll take that back out. I mean, the way that maybe the path or the road has somehow been blocked, or somebody's blocked it. Maybe they come across a village of people who say, "No, you can't go that way; it's forbidden."
Yeah.
And you can either
Gotta go the long
negotiate
way
your way,
around.
go the long way around. And they're like,
Or
"Well, what if we
negotiate. I
give you
like that.
we'll give you some gold?" And I'm like, "Well, we don't. Well, I'm not interested in your gold, well, but we do really like your earrings that your great grandmother gave you.
I love
So,
it.
make them pay for it, but just not in something that they want to pay for it with. Whatever
Right.
commodity they have the most of is not useful here.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. I think this is, oh man, this is going to be so great. And yeah, I'll have to think up some of the other stuff to fully flesh this out. But these are great suggestions, and this is what I love about world building.
Bringing back my focus has gone out.
Yeah.
Oh.
I hope
Anyway.
Avery put his headphones back on so
Yeah.
he knows that we're at the end of our weekly world building segment. So hopefully you guys, if you were playing along and you need to create an encounter table, yeah, we didn't think of all 12, but it kind of gives you an idea of just creating some random table for your players in the moment that they're in, the terrain that they're in, the plot that they're working through. Like, you can totally make your own table, and you can use Chat GPT, which I could have done, but I like doing this with you, so this is good.
Yeah, totally. I mean, honestly, I could have used it too right now, and I decided, no, we're going to do this the good old-fashioned way. I mean, it would be interesting to compare what you get from it. We should do experiments. We should give each other things to insert into our games, or to play with, or they could be quite vague so that they fit into your world. And we could do some kind of experiment whereby you go away and report on the outcome of something that you try, some technique or some mechanic or something.
Wait, say that again. Say it again. I want to make sure I understand.
So, like, I give you an idea for something, something like an idea for an encounter, or a monster or something, or a plot device or something like that.
Yeah.
And then the following week you come back and tell us how it went, and vice versa. So you give me something to add into my game to report back to you about.
We should do that. We should.
It could be fun, couldn't it?
We might actually. Maybe we should make that next week's show. We'll have some homework to do.
Right.
I don't know. You guys will be surprised if that's what
certainly
we
be
do.
a segment.
That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I love that. All right, folks. Well, since we've gone through all of our segments, this is the point in the show where I'm going to say that if you enjoyed this, please remember to like our show, subscribe to all our channels wherever you're finding us, and share with your friends if you can. We would greatly appreciate it. Appreciate it. I can speak English. And then come check out our website. I think I saw that our website got posted to the chat. So come find us, support the studio, all of our shows and products. Come find our Discord if you saw that post or that link in the in the thing, because in the doobly-doo.
Singing the thing with the doobly-doo.
Yes, because if you want to submit for voice acting, then tomorrow's the deadline. So make sure you find out all you need to do and all that you need to submit, and come find us on Discord. And lastly, when our podcast gets posted, it will show up on all the other podcast platforms: Amazon, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and so forth. So share with all your friends wherever they listen, and then come talk to us in Discord, because we have a little community and we like talking with you folks.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
For sure.
For sure.
I also have a Discord, RKDM. If you're interested, PM me and I'll flick you an invite to my Discord, and Twitch channel, YouTube channel, and so on. We have some cool videos about how to play D&D and game mechanics and stuff like that, and squillions and squillions of hours of archived videos of games.
Yes.
So, if you you can find me on Questbook if you want to hire me for a DM. Run a bunch of different games, different scenarios, and so on. Mostly 5e and Vampire the Masquerade. So there you go. Look
All
me up
right.
if you're interested. Yeah. There you go. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I think
Yes.
we're out.
Thank you. I think that's it. Tonight was a longer show than I expected. So I think we're good to go. So I'm just going to tell everyone that these days can be fun days when you talk nerdy with friends, and we will see you next week. See you next week, folks.
See you next week, folks. Bye.